Hi guys, and welcome to Boring History Story Relaxing. Tonight we step into London in the year 1884, where the afternoon rain falls softly over black rooftops. Wet cobblestones, chimney pots, shop windows, and the restless shoulders of people who have already had quite enough weather for one day. You stand beneath a dripping awning, hearing carriage wheels hiss through puddles, smelling coal smoke, damp wool, horse sweat, tea leaves, and that particular city scent that says, very politely, your boots may never be dry again. And yes, before you get too cozy imagining a romantic Victorian nap. Here is your tiny reality check. You probably won't survive this gracefully if you expect clean air, central heating, soundproof walls, or a mattress that has not already lived a complicated life. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you are listening from and what your local time is, because somewhere out there, somebody is probably hearing rain too. Now, dim the lights and let yourself arrive in the wet, murmuring city. You are in London on a rainy afternoon in 1884, and the first thing you notice is not the grandness of empire, nor the proud stone buildings, nor the enormous confidence with which Victorian London likes to present itself to the world. The first thing you notice is water. Water everywhere. Water dripping from iron railings. Water sliding down brick. Water gathering in the uneven street, where carriage wheels break it apart into brown fans. Water beading on the sleeves of passers-by and gathering along the brims of hats. The city is not being washed clean. Exactly. That would be too optimistic. London is being made damp. The rain is steady rather than violent. The kind of rain that seems to have no dramatic ambition at all. It simply intends to continue. It taps on window glass, whispers through gutters, patters on canvas awnings, and darkens the wooden signboards above shops. The air has a soft grey thickness to it. Not quite fog, not quite smoke, but a gentle mixture of both. It lies against your face like a cool cloth. A modern person might call this cosy. A Victorian Londoner might call it Tuesday. You stand near the edge of the pavement, trying to decide where a tired person might reasonably sleep for a while. Not for the night yet, not permanently, just an afternoon rest. The sort of small escape that feels luxurious when the rain is falling and the world outside has turned into a wet painting. But London does not hand out rest equally. It never has, even before you choose a bed, even before you whore. The city begins quietly examining you. Your coat matters, your shoes matter, your accent matters, your sex, your age, your money, your apparent respectability, even the way you hold yourself under the rain. All of it becomes part of the silent negotiation, a mainstream historical fact worth carrying with you, like a small lantern, is that by the 1880s London was the largest city in the world, with millions of people crowded into a vast, uneven metropolis of wealth, industry, poverty, lodging houses, railway stations, markets, churches, clubs, workrooms, and slums. It is not just a city, it is a machine for living, working, selling, eating, freezing, gossiping, surviving, and occasionally sleeping. And because it is so large, it contains nearly every kind of afternoon shelter imaginable. From grand hotels where polished servants move like chess pieces, to cramped rented rooms where one must pretend not to hear the neighbour coughing through the wall. You are probably not entering the Grand Hotel, let us be honest with ourselves. We are here for atmosphere, not aristocratic billing. Instead, you walk slowly beneath the rain, joining the flow of bodies moving along the street. Umbrellas bob above the crowd, most of them dark, practical, and slightly battered. Some people carry them with dignity, others hold them like weapons in a low-level street battle. A man in a bowler hat steps around a puddle with offended precision. A woman lifts her skirt just enough to keep the hem from the worst of the mud. though the mud has opinions of its own. A messenger boy darts between carts, cap pulled low, shoulders shining with rain, somewhere close by. A horse gives a damp snort, as if deeply unimpressed by civilization. The soundscape is layered and strangely soothing. Once you stop expecting silence, hooves strike the road in uneven rhythms. Cab wheels rattle over stones. Shop bells ring as doors open and close. A distant street seller calls out something that the weather immediately blurs. Rainwater rushes along the gutter, carrying straw, soot, scraps of paper, and whatever else London has chosen not to discuss in polite company. The city speaks in murmurs, clatters, splashes, and sighs. You pass a tea shop window brightened by lamps, though it is only afternoon. Inside, people sit close to the glass, their faces softened by steam. Cups lift, saucers flash pale in the gloom. The sight tugs at you, because rainy afternoons have a way of making warm interiors look almost magical. Not fantasy magical, of course, Victorian magical, which means the tea may be comforting. The chair may be stiff, and someone nearby may silently judge your gloves. A quirky little tidbit from this period is that umbrellas, once associated by some with foreign habits or fussy manners, had by the Victorian era become common enough in London that they were part of everyday street life, yet still carried their own codes of class and respectability. A good umbrella could suggest discipline and comfort. A poor umbrella could look like a collapsed bat that had lost faith in society. You glance at the umbrellas around you and realise each one is almost a social document, moving through the rain on two tired legs. Your own clothes are beginning to grow heavy. Damp wool has a particular feeling, both clingy and stubborn. It does not simply sit on the body, it negotiates with the skin. Your cuffs are wet. The edges of your coat smell faintly of street rain and smoke. If your boots are leather, they have already started to soften at the creases, if they are old. Water may be finding little secret paths inside. Each step brings a small chill upward from the soles, a reminder that cosy sleep must first be earned. And still, the afternoon has a gentleness to it. The rain lowers the sky and softens the distance. Harsh lines blur. The city seems, for a moment, less sharp. Chimneys fade into grey. Windows glow like small squares of amber. People hurry, but not with panic. They know this weather. They have known it since childhood. Londoners do not necessarily enjoy rain, but they have built 1,000 small rituals around enduring it. Tea, fires, thick curtains, public houses, shared rooms, complaints, more tea. You pause at a crossing, waiting while a cab rolls past. The horse's hooves send dirty water outward, and everyone near the curb leans back with practiced suspicion. Crossing a London street in 1884 is not a peaceful act. It is a negotiation with mud, wheels, animals, impatience, and fate. You watch for your moment, then step down carefully. The road surface is slick beneath you. The smell is stronger here, warmed by motion despite the chill. Horse dung, wet straw, coal smoke, mud, leather, and rain is not exactly pleasant, but it is alive, very alive, perhaps too alive. Somewhere beyond the rooftops, the Thames moves under the grey afternoon, carrying barges, smells, fog, industry, memory, and secrets. You cannot see it from here, but you feel its presence in the dampness of the city, in the traffic, in the trades, in the soot-dark buildings that lean toward commerce like plants toward light. London in 1884 is connected by river, rail, road, and rumour. News travels, goods travel, illness travels too, unfortunately. Because Victorian urban life is generous like that. Researchers still disagree about how exactly ordinary Londoners experience sleep in such crowded conditions, because diaries, reports, advertisements, court records, and reform literature each show different pieces of the truth. Some accounts emphasize discomfort, noise, vermin, and exhaustion. Others reveal real pockets of warmth, routine, affection, and pride in domestic order. Perhaps both are true. Perhaps your afternoon nap, if you manage to find one, will belong to that delicate middle ground where hardship and comfort sit together on the same narrow bed. You continue walking, drawn by the idea of shelter, not luxury, just a room where the rain becomes a sound instead of a condition. A place where wet clothes can steam near a fire, where a cup of tea can warm the fingers, where the mattress may be lumpy but horizontal, which is already a persuasive argument. The city around you seems to understand this desire. Every lit window becomes an invitation. Every closed door becomes a reminder. Inside, somebody has heat. Inside, somebody has a chair. Inside, somebody may already be asleep, breathing softly beneath a blanket while London rains itself tired outside. Ahead, a narrow street turns away from the busier road. It is quieter there, though not silent. The buildings stand close together, their brick faces darkened by years of soot and weather. A sign swings gently above a doorway. The paint is worn, but you can make out the promise of rooms, lodging, perhaps weekly, perhaps nightly, perhaps flexible enough if your coins look respectable. The windows are dim, but one of them glows faintly with firelight. The rain threads down in front of it like silver strings. You step toward it, feeling the wet weight of the afternoon behind you. The city does not stop, keeps clattering, breathing, dripping, selling, shouting and steaming. But you have found a possible threshold, and thresholds matter. On one side is the rain, on the other maybe warmth, or at least the Victorian version of warmth, which often means a small coal fire, a suspicious blanket, and a room full of smells with long personal histories. Your hand rises toward the door. The wood is damp beneath your fingers. Somewhere inside, a floorboard creaks. The door does not open at once, for a moment. You stand under the narrow shelter of the entrance while rain works patiently at the back of your collar. It slides from the brim of your hat, drops onto your sleeve, and taps the doorstep beside your boot. Behind you, the street continues its wet performance. Before you, the lodging house holds its breath. Then a latch shifts, and the door opens just wide enough for a face to examine you. Not a dramatic face, not a villainous face, just the tired practical face of someone who has seen too many damp strangers and knows that each one may bring coins, trouble, illness, gossip, or all four together, because London likes efficiency. The landlady, or perhaps a servant acting on her behalf, looks you over quickly, your coat, your boots, your hands, your expression. The rain makes you look a little more harmless than you perhaps deserve. Dampness is humbling like that. You explain that you need a room, or a place to rest for the afternoon, and the woman's eyes narrow with calculation. In 1884, shelter is not only a matter of money, it is a matter of being believed. Are you respectable? Are you likely to vanish without paying? Are you likely to disturb the other lodgers? Are you alone for innocent reasons, or for reasons that will make the house talked about? Every Victorian doorway comes with an invisible moral committee, and today, unfortunately, you are standing before it in wet boots. At last, she opens the door wider. Warmth does not rush out. That would be too generous. Instead, a breath of interior air meets you, warmer than the street but carrying a dense mixture of coal smoke, boiled cloth, old wood, damp plaster, tea, furniture polish, and human life. It is not fresh. It is not unpleasant either, at least not after the street. It's the smell of people trying to remain dry in a city that keeps disagreeing with them. You step inside, and immediately the sound of rain changes. Outside it was everywhere, striking pavement, roof, cart, coat and gutter. Inside it becomes filtered, softer. It taps at windows and runs through pipes and gutters, becoming part of the building's background breathing. Your shoulders lower a little. The city is still around you, but now it is outside the wall, and even a thin wall can feel like mercy. A mainstream fact to keep in mind here is that Victorian London contained a wide range of rented accommodations, from relatively respectable lodging houses and boarding houses to overcrowded common lodging houses where poorer residents might rent a bed, part of a bed, or even space by the night. The differences between them could be enormous. Some offered order, meals, and a watchful household structure. Others offered little more than a place to collapse among strangers. Your rainy afternoon sleep depends heavily on where your few coins place you on that long ladder. The hall is narrow. The floorboards darken where wet shoes have passed repeatedly, and a strip of matting lies near the door in a heroic but losing struggle against mud. Coats hang from pegs. Some are heavy and respectable. Others look as if the weather has been slowly eating them for years. A black umbrella leans in the corner, dripping into a shallow dish. Another umbrella, broken along one rib, has been left open halfway like a wounded bird recovering from social embarrassment. The landlady tells you the price. Perhaps it is more than you hoped. It usually is. You pay, or promise, or negotiate in that soft, polite way people use when both sides understand that money is the true subject, but nobody wants to say so too loudly. She leads you inward, past a small front room where a fire burns low in the grate. A man sits near it with a newspaper. Though the room is dim enough that reading must be more an act of pride than convenience. His boots steam faintly. He does not look up, but he absolutely notices you. Victorian interiors often teach you that privacy is not the same as solitude. Eyes appear briefly from doorways. A child peeks from behind a stair rail, then vanishes somewhere below, perhaps in a kitchen. A kettle mutters somewhere above. Someone coughs with the long patience of a person who's been coughing for weeks and has decided to make it part of their personality. The house contains many lives stacked vertically, and your own tired body is about to be added to the pile. A curious little tidbit from London's lodging world is that some establishments advertise specific comforts in newspapers and street notices, such as clean beds, good fires, quiet rooms, or proximity to railway stations. The claims were not always equally true. Naturally, Victorian advertising could polish reality until it shone like a cheap teaspoon. Still, the promises reveal what weary people wanted most: cleanliness, warmth, quiet, and the reassurance that the bed would not introduce them to a private ecosystem. You follow the woman up the stairs. The banister is smooth from many hands. The stair carpet, where there is one, is worn down the centre and darker at the edges. Each step answers your weight with a small complaint. The house seems to have opinions about everyone who enters it. Halfway up, a window on the landing looks out over the street. Rain blurs the view, turning passing carts into soft shapes and umbrellas, into dark mushrooms drifting through grey light. The street below is still busy. You see a cab pass, its driver hunched beneath a cape. The horse's back shines wetly. A woman crosses with a basket covered by cloth. Two boys in caps hurry along the pavement, one laughing as the other nearly slips. Policeman stands near the corner, cape heavy with rain, looking like a piece of official furniture placed there for public reassurance. London on a wet afternoon is full of movement, and yet from this window, softened by the glass and rain, it begins to feel almost dreamlike. You're shown a room. It is small. Of course, Victorian rooms in modest lodging houses do not waste space on your emotional needs. The ceiling slopes slightly, or perhaps the house itself has settled into a tired angle over the decades. A bed stands against the wall, narrow but inviting because you are damp and human, and therefore easily persuaded. There is a washstand with a basin and jug, a chair, a small table, a few pegs for clothing, and a fireplace that may or may not be active depending on what you have paid for and how generous the management feels. The wallpaper has a faded pattern of flowers or vines, though soot and time have subdued it into something closer to memory than decoration. Near the window, the paper has bubbled slightly from damp. The curtains are heavy enough to block light but not heavy enough to block cold. On the mantel, perhaps, sits a cracked ornament, a box of matches, or a candle stub. Nothing is luxurious. Everything is useful or was useful once and has been promoted to decorative by exhaustion. You move towards the window and look out. Rain continues to fall in fine diagonal lines. A gutter leaks at the building opposite, sending a steady thread of water into a barrel below, beyond the nearest roofs. Chimneys rise like black fingers into the grey. Smoke leaves them reluctantly, smudging itself into the wet air. It is afternoon, but the room feels already close to evening. London has a talent for making daylight seem borrowed. Some specialists still debate how often ordinary lodgers experienced rented rooms as comforting rather than merely necessary. Reformers of the period often described urban housing through the language of danger, overcrowding, and moral anxiety, while personal accounts sometimes show a more mixed picture, where even a poor room could be cherished if it offered control, routine, and a door that closed. Standing here, damp and tired, you understand the second view a little better. The room is shabby. Yes, it smells of coal, old fabric, and someone else's soap, but it is yours for now, and the rain is outside. That matters. The landlady gives instructions. Do not waste coal, do not spill water, do not bring in visitors, do not make noise, do not assume breakfast is included. Victorian hospitality often arrives wearing an apron and carrying rules. You nod with the seriousness of a person who wants to be left alone with a bed. When she leaves, the latch clicks softly behind her. For the first time since entering the street, you are alone enough to hear yourself breathe. You remove your gloves slowly. They cling at the fingers. Your hands feel cold and slightly stiff. You set your hat down carefully, because even a wet hat has dignity to maintain. The room is quiet, but not silent. Rain taps the window. A cart rattles below. A muffled voice rises through the floor, then fades, somewhere in the wall. A pipe makes a small ticking sound as if counting the seconds until you finally admit how tired you are. You look at the bed again. It waits beneath its blankets, plain and narrow, with a pillow that may be thinner than your hopes but still better than standing in the rain. Before you can sleep, though, you must cross the small domestic frontier between outside and inside. You must shed the weather, you must deal with boots, cuffs, damp wool, chilled skin, and the delicate Victorian problem of becoming comfortable without becoming improper, wasteful, or foolish. The rain deepens against the glass, and the room seems to draw closer around you. You stand in the middle of the room for a moment, listening to the rain as if it might give instructions. It does not. It simply continues, touching the window in fine, restless fingers. The glass is slightly uneven, and the grey light bends through it in wavering sheets, turning the room into something soft-edged and uncertain. The bed waits. The chair waits. Your wet clothing waits with the heavy patience of a problem that cannot be ignored. Before you undress, before you warm yourself, before you become even slightly horizontal, you feel the weight of the choice that brought you here. This room is not merely a room. In London, in 1884, a rented room is a small verdict. It says something about your coins, your reputation, your apparent safety, and the kind of life others imagine you live. The city sorts people constantly, sometimes with written signs, sometimes with prices, sometimes with nothing more than a look at the doorway. You've been admitted, and that admission feels quietly significant. A widely accepted historical fact is that Victorian London's housing market was deeply stratified, meaning shelter could range from elite hotels and respectable boarding houses to crowded common lodging houses. Model dwellings, workhouses, and desperate informal arrangements. The form of shelter available to you depended on income, gender, family status, employment, and perceived respectability. A person could become exhausted in every class, certainly, but the bed offered to that exhaustion could differ dramatically. Some slept behind locked private doors. Some slept in shared rooms, some paid for a mattress, some paid for less than that. So when you look around this modest room, You're seeing a narrow but meaningful form of luck. The walls are thin, the carpet is worn, the fireplace gives only the promise of warmth unless fed. Still, the door closes. There is a bed that belongs to you for the hour. There is a jug of water, though whether the water is fresh enough to inspire confidence is a separate emotional journey. There is a chair on which to place your clothes. There is a little table where your coins, gloves, and damp handkerchief can lie like tired survivors of the street. Compared with the harder edges of the city outside, this is almost luxury. Not shiny luxury, not opera cloak and silver spoon luxury, more like no one is currently splashing gutter water onto your stockings luxury. We accept what we can get. You begin to understand how much of Victorian comfort is really controlled exposure. The outside world is not excluded entirely. It seeps in through cracks, smoke, noise, smell, and memory. But it is reduced enough that the body can stop bracing for a while. That is the great promise of the room. It does not make London disappear, it simply turns London down. You move to the window again and watch the pavement below. The rain has made the street darker, shinier, more theatrical. People pass in little private weather systems, a clerk with a high collar and a flat, resentful umbrella, a young woman carrying a parcel beneath her cloak, a porter bent beneath a load, a child hopping over puddles with the confidence of someone whose boots are already ruined. Each figure seems to belong to a different London, and yet all are moving through the same wet afternoon. Your place among them depends on details. If you're a man travelling for business, your presence in a lodging house may be ordinary. If you are a woman alone, questions thicken around you more quickly. Are you widowed, employed, visiting family, respectable, vulnerable, suspicious? The city is full of women working, travelling, nursing, teaching, sewing, serving and surviving. But public respectability often remains a tight garment, especially when it is wet and uncomfortable. If you are poorly dressed, the doorway narrows. If you are too well dressed, another kind of assumption may follow you. Victorian judgment is versatile, it likes to keep busy. A peculiar tidbit from the world of Victorian respectability is that luggage could act almost like a passport of character. A neat bag, a labelled trunk, or even a respectable umbrella might help support the story that you are a proper traveller rather than a troublesome wanderer. This is wonderfully absurd and also completely human. People have always trusted props more than they should. In 1884, a clean collar and a modest valise could speak before you did, saying, "Please do not place me in the category of social alarm." You glance at your own things and hope they have been making a convincing argument. The room seems to listen with you. From the corridor comes the faint shuffle of someone passing, then the creak of a board that protests in a very personal tone. There is a murmur of voices from downstairs. Perhaps the landlady is speaking to another lodger. Perhaps she is discussing coal. Coal is always worth discussing. Warmth has a price, and in a damp city, that price sits close to the centre of domestic life. You step toward the fireplace and inspect it. If the fire is already lit, it burns low, a red and orange glow under a crust of black coal. If not, the grate contains ash, a few cinders, and the memory of heat. Either way, you find yourself drawn to it. A Victorian room without a fire can feel less like a room and more like a storage box for cold air. With a fire, even a small one, the space gathers a heart. The chair belongs near it. Your hands belong near it. Your damp cuffs certainly belong near it, though not so near that they smoke or scorch, because that would be a dramatic turn for an afternoon nap. You imagine the other possible shelters you did not choose. A grand hotel near a railway terminus, where travellers arrive under canopies and servants manage the luggage with brisk competence. A middle-class boarding house where meals are shared at set times. Conversation is polite, and everyone silently tracks who takes too much butter. A common lodging house in a poorer district, where beds may be crowded, air close, and privacy almost non-existent. A workhouse casual ward, harsher and more humiliating, where shelter might be available but at the cost of rules, labour and stigma. The city offers rest, but it attaches conditions. Social historians continue to argue over how far Victorian lodging arrangements should be understood mainly as exploitation, practical adaptation, moral surveillance, or a kind of informal social safety net. The answer shifts depending on whose room you enter. Reformers often saw danger and disorder. Landladies saw risk and unpaid bills. Lodgers saw necessity, opportunity, loneliness, and sometimes refuge. You, standing in this dim room with rain streaking the window, can feel all of those meanings layered together. A bed is never just a bed when so many people need one. You sit at last on the chair, carefully, because chairs in rented rooms sometimes have more confidence than structural integrity. It holds. This is encouraging. You look down at your boots. Mud has gathered along the soles and around the seams. A brown line of wet grit marks where London has accompanied you indoors without invitation. Your legs feel tired from walking, but it is the deeper tiredness of constant awareness that surprises you. In a modern room, you might collapse without ceremony. Here, every movement must be considered. Where do you place wet things? How close to the fire is safe can you trust the blanket? Is the door properly latched? How much sound travels through the wall? Will someone knock? Will the landlady charge extra if you ask for more coal? Truly, relaxation has paperwork. The rain answers all of this with a steady hush. You begin to feel the room as a temporary arrangement between body and city. Outside, London continues sorting its millions by wage, gender, address, accent, and luck inside. You have a few square yards in which to become less wet. The modesty of that comfort makes it more touching, not less. You are not escaping history. You are lying down inside it. Your fingers move to the fastenings of your coat. The fabric resists slightly, swollen with damp. You draw a slow breath. Smelling coal smoke and wet wool, the next task is simple, but it will take patience. You must peel away the afternoon, layer by layer, and coax your chilled body toward warmth. Your coat comes away slowly, as if it has developed a personal attachment to your shoulders during the walk. Damp wool does not simply slide off. It clings, folds grips, and complains in silence. You ease one arm free, then the other, careful not to brush the wet hem against the bed. The room is too small for graceful movement, so every gesture feels slightly theatrical. You're both actor and audience in the little domestic drama of not dripping on the blanket. The chair receives the coat with a tired creak. It sags beneath the weight, and for one anxious second you imagine the whole thing collapsing into a heap of wet fabric, cracked wood, and Victorian disappointment. But the chair holds. You smooth the coat across its back, spreading it enough that the warmer air can reach it. Near the fire, but not too near. That is the rule. In a room like this, comfort is always balanced against disaster by the width of a hand. You remove your hat next. The brim is dark with rain, and a cold bead of water slides from it onto your wrist. Your gloves lie on the table, limp and faintly shiny, looking less like clothing and more like two small, exhausted creatures. You flex your fingers and feel the blood returning in little prickles. The skin across your knuckles is cool, almost numb, but the room is beginning to do its work. Not quickly. Victorian warmth is not a modern radiator blooming obediently at the twist of a dial. It is slower, smokier, more argumentative. It must be fed and respected. One dependable fact about ordinary Victorian domestic life is that drying wet clothing indoors was often a careful, practical task, especially in damp weather. Families and lodgers used hearths, fire guards, clothes horses, chair backs, hooks and lines. but they had to avoid scorching fabric, filling rooms with steam, or making smoky air worse in a city heated largely by coal fires. Warmth was precious, yet badly managed heat could ruin garments or endanger a room. The cosy glow has responsibilities. You glance at the grate. The coal has settled into a low red bed, breathing through its own ash. A few brighter veins pulse when a draft slips across it. You crouch slightly and extend your hands toward the heat. The warmth reaches your palms first, then your wrists, then fades before it can reach your elbows. The back of you remains cool. That's the sole comic cruelty of a little fire. It warms one side of life at a time. The smell of coal is thick but familiar now, folding into the room's other scents: damp cloth, old soap, wax, dust, plaster, and faint tea from somewhere below. Your boots bring in the street's darker perfume. Mud and horse traffic and wet leather. You untie them carefully. The laces are stiff with moisture, and your fingers fumble. At last, the first boot loosens with a soft pull, releasing your foot into air that feels both cold and wonderful. The stocking is damp at the toes. Of course it is. London has breached the defences. You set the boot near the hearth, angled so the sole can dry without baking the leather. Then the other boot follows. A person of experience might stuff them with paper, if paper is available and not needed for something more important. Newspaper can help absorb moisture, and London has newspapers in abundance, though not always ones you are permitted to sacrifice. You imagine the man downstairs guarding his copy with patriotic seriousness. Best not. An odd little detail from Victorian household manuals and advice literature is how much attention they gave to the care of boots. Hems, gloves, and outer garments, because clothing was expensive and repair mattered. A wet boot was not just an inconvenience, it was property under threat. Leather that dried too quickly could crack. Wool that stayed damp could smell, shrink, or encourage mildew. The modern habit of tossing everything over a machine-made chair and hoping for the best would look, to many careful Victorians, like a moral failure with buttons. You sit again, now lighter by 2 boots and 1 coat, and feel how dampness remains even after the outer layer is gone. It has entered cuffs, stockings, underclothes, and mood. The hem of your garment is wet from the crossing, if you wear a skirt. The lower fabric has gathered mud in a heavy ring, and lifting it away from the fire without smoking it requires patience. If you wear trousers, the fabric at the ankles clings coldly and carries grit. Either way, the rain has written itself onto you. The room offers a basin and jug on the washstand. You pour a little water, and the sound is gentle, almost musical. In the quiet, the water is cool. You wash your hands first, because the street has touched everything. The soap is small and hard, perhaps provided by the house, perhaps left by someone before you, which is a thought best allowed to pass without deep inspection. You rub your fingers, watching grey water gather in the bowl. London leaves traces. Soot, mud, and street dust dissolve into little cloudy swirls. Some historians of everyday life continue to question how closely published domestic ideals match the routines of ordinary rented rooms. Manuals preached cleanliness, order, ventilation, careful laundering, and disciplined use of the hearth, while crowded urban reality often gave people little space, little fuel, shared facilities, and far too much damp. The gap between instruction and practice could be wide. Still, people tried. That is what you feel in this room, not perfection, but effort, a basin, a fire. A chair placed just so, a habit of making do. You dry your hands on a towel that has been used but not abused. It smells faintly of soap and enclosed air. Then you hold your fingers toward the fire again. The prickling warmth grows sharper. Your body begins the slow return from weather. Shoulders loosen, breath lengthens, the jaw unclenches, almost without permission. Now comes the delicate question of how much to remove before an afternoon sleep. You're not in your own home, and the room, though private, is not fully trustworthy. The door has a latch, but people knock, servants enter, landladies forget, and houses have their own social rules. You may loosen your collar, you may remove damp outer layers, you may unfasten tight points of clothing, but you remain aware of modesty, propriety, and sudden interruption. Comfort, again, is negotiated. You place smaller garments where they might dry gloves spread open, scarf draped over the chair rail, hat near enough to soften but not warp, stockings perhaps changed if you are fortunate enough to have a dry pair. The act becomes almost meditative. Each item has a place. Each damp edge is turned toward warmth. You are not merely preparing to sleep, you're restoring order after the disorder of rain. Outside the window, the downpour thickens briefly, then steadies. It rattles against the glass with a sound like thousands of tiny beads being poured from the grey sky. The city beyond becomes less visible. You can make out only blurred windows opposite, the dark line of a roof, the watery shine of the street below. A cart passes, unseen except for the rolling sound of wheels through puddles. Somewhere, a bell rings once and fades into wet air. The fire pops softly. You glance toward it at once, because fire in a small room is never only decoration. A tiny spark drops harmlessly into the grate. Still. You understand the caution: cloth, paper, wood, soot, coal, candle stubs, narrow rooms. Tired people and long skirts do not make a combination that encourages carelessness. Cosy? Yes. Safe without attention? No. Victorian rest keeps one eye open until sleep finally wins. You draw the chair a little closer and place your feet near the hearth. Heat begins to gather around your toes. The damp stocking cools, warms, cools again, then slowly gives up its chill. Steam lifts faintly from a hem. Not much, just enough to show that the rain is leaving you by degrees. Your clothes smell stronger as they warm, releasing the afternoon pavement, smoke, wool and weather. It is strangely comforting, not elegant, not airy, not clean in the modern sense, but intimate. The room accepts your dampness and answers with its small resources. Fire, wood, cloth, bowl, chair, silence enough. You begin to feel that sleep may be possible after all. Once the last cold threads have loosened from your skin, you turn toward the little table, where perhaps tea can be arranged, or has already been promised. Your body, newly aware of warmth, remembers hunger. The thought of tea arrives gently at first, like a small candle being lit somewhere inside you. Then it grows brighter. Warm fingers are one thing, a warm stomach is another. The room has begun to loosen the rain from your sleeves and boots, but some deeper chill remains, the kind that settles behind the ribs after too long in wet streets. A fire can reach your palms, tea can travel inward, politely, with steam. You listen for movement beyond the door. The lodging house is not silent, though it has the muffled softness of a building holding many damp people at once. A door closes below. Someone laughs briefly, then hushes, perhaps remembering the landlady. A kettle knocks against metal. The smell of boiling water rises faintly through the house, mingling with coal smoke and damp wool. It is astonishing how quickly the body becomes hopeful when it hears kitchen sounds. You check your garments once more, because drying is not finished simply because you have placed things near heat. The boots sit angled by the hearth like two tired animals. Their leather shines darkly. A thin thread of steam seems to lift from one toe, so you pull it back a little. Too much heat too fast could damage it, and in 1884 boots are not casual objects. They're investments, companions, social signals, and, on days like this, the thin border between your feet and London's cold brown soup. Here is a plain truth from the period good footwear mattered enormously in Victorian cities, especially for people who walk long distances for work, errands or travel. Streets could be muddy, wet, crowded with horse traffic, and uneven underfoot. So worn or leaking boots were more than an annoyance. They could shape health, comfort, respectability, and employability. Dry feet were not a small luxury. They were part of staying functional. You turn each boot gently, letting one side face the fire, then another. It becomes a slow little ritual. Adjust. Wait. Touch the leather. Pull back. Set down, and you do the same with your gloves, opening the fingers so warm air can creep inside. One glove has curled at the palm, as if still holding the shape of your tired hand. Your scarf is draped over the chair back, and the damp edge darkens the wood. You move it slightly, worried it may leave a stain. Even rest has chores. If you have a skirt, the lower hem is the great battlefield. It has collected the weather in a heavy line. You lift it carefully and spread part of it over the chair, keeping fabric away from the flame. The wet cloth releases a smell of wool, street dust and rainwater that is not exactly pleasant, yet strangely honest. If you wear trousers, you smooth the knees and cuffs, feeling where grit has stiffened the cloth. Either way, you are learning that a Victorian rainy afternoon does not end when you come indoors. It follows you inside and asks to be managed. A lesser-known detail tucked inside all this domestic fuss is that many Victorian households use clothes horse, fire guards, and airing racks not as charming accessories, but as everyday tools in the fight against damp. In poorer or rented rooms, people improvise with chair backs, lines, pegs, railings, and the mantel edge. The cosy image of garments steaming near a fire looks picturesque from a distance. Up close, it is practical labour, with a faint chance of scorching your best sleeve if you get sentimental. You stand and go to the washstand again. The basin water has turned grey from your hands, so you hesitate. Cleanliness in a rented room often involves compromise. You could ask for fresh water, but that might cost goodwill, time, or an extra look from the landlady. You pour a small amount from the jug, enough to rinse your face and neck. The water is cool enough to wake you more than you intended. You press it to your cheeks and feel soot and street damp lift away. The towel scratches slightly. It is not soft, but it is dry, and dry is a form of kindness. Your reflection in the small mirror, if there is one, appears dim and uncertain. Victorian mirrors in modest rooms rarely flatter. The glass may be spotted, the light poor, the frame darkened by smoke. You look like a traveller rescued from a puddle. Your hair is flattened at the edges, your collar is wilted, your expression is calmer now, but tired, very tired. The kind of tiredness that arrives after the body has stopped pretending to be brave. Outside, the rain softens again, becoming finer, almost silvery. It turns the window into a veil. The world beyond is not gone, only blurred. Across the narrow street, a lamp appears in another window, its flame small and honey-coloured. Someone over there is also making decisions about heat, clothing, supper, and sleep. You are one person in a city of rooms, each room containing its own weather. Researchers who study Victorian domestic life often differ over how much comfort ordinary urban interiors truly provided. Some emphasise overcrowding, damp walls, poor ventilation, and the constant cost of fuel. Others point out that even modest households created meaningful rituals of care, order, warmth, tea, washing, mending, and rest. You feel the tension between those views in your own damp sleeves. This room is imperfect. It may be smoky, it may not be fully clean. Yet it is also doing something real for you. It is turning exposure into shelter. A soft knock comes at the door. You straighten at once, because privacy in this house is a polite fiction with a latch attached. The door opens after you answer, and a tray appears, carried by the landlady or a young servant with quick eyes. The tray is modest, a cup, perhaps a small pot, bread, butter if fortune is in a generous mood, maybe a little jam, or a plain biscuit that looks as though it has survived hardship and intends to continue. There may be milk, there may not. Sugar depends on the arrangement. Nothing here is automatic except rain. The tray is placed on the table with a small clink. You thank her. She notices the boots by the fire and says something practical about not putting them too close. You nod gravely, as if you had not already been conducting a full moral relationship with them. She glances at the coat, the scarf, the damp hem, the basin, and perhaps approves of your attempt not to ruin the room. Then she leaves, closing the door with a firmness that reminds you the space is yours, but not entirely. The smell of tea rises at once. It changes the room. Coal smoke remains. Damp cloth remains. London remains beyond the window, but the tea adds a gentler layer. Warm, tannic, faintly bitter, edged with comfort. You sit at the table and wrap both hands around the cup before drinking. Heat passes through the china into your fingers. The first sip is almost too hot, so you wait, breathing in steam. It dampens your face in a kinder way than the weather did. Victorian tea is not merely a drink, it is a pause, a social habit, a stimulant, a comfort, a small ceremony available in different forms across classes. The wealthy may take it with fine china and cakes. You take it in a rented room while your boots steam cautiously by the grate. Honestly, this version may understand the soul better. You break the bread. It is plain, maybe a little stale at the edge, but the warmth of the tea makes it welcome. Butter softens unevenly if there is any. A smear of jam would feel almost festive. You eat slowly, hearing the rain, the small fire, the hidden building. Your stomach relaxes. Your hands stop trembling from cold. The wet day begins to lose its claim over you. There is a funny tenderness in this ordinary moment. Nothing grand has happened. No royal carriage has passed. No famous statesman has entered. No dramatic fog has swallowed a bridge. You are simply sitting in a small London room in 1884, drying your clothes, drinking tea, and preparing to sleep while rain makes a curtain of the afternoon. Yet social history lives exactly here, in the humble negotiations between weather, body, money, habit, and rest. You glance toward the bed again. It looks different now, less suspicious, more possible. The pillow is still thin, the blanket still carries its unknown past. The mattress may have opinions, but your boots are drying, your coat is steaming faintly, tea warms your stomach, and the rain has become a lullaby instead of an enemy. Soon you will need to prepare the bed itself, and that, in Victorian London, is not quite as simple as pulling back a blanket and trusting the universe. The tea cools by degrees, and you learn the rhythm of it without thinking. Sip, breathe, listen, sip again. Let the cup warm the place between your hands, outside. The rain continues to fall, no longer an assault on your clothing, but a soft grey music beyond the glass. The room has gathered itself around you. The fire shifts in the grate. Your coat gives off a faint damp breath from the chair. Your boots, safely withdrawn from too much heat, begin their slow recovery from the street. You take another bite of bread, and the plainness of it feels almost kind. It does not ask anything of you. It is not rich enough to trouble the stomach or festive enough to demand conversation. It is just bread, slightly firm at the edge, softer in the middle, carrying a trace of butter if you have been lucky. The tea follows it down, warm and faintly bitter, and your body receives both with the quiet gratitude of a tired traveller. In Victorian Britain, tea had become one of the most familiar comforts of daily life across many social levels, though the quality, timing, and ceremony of it varied greatly in wealthier homes. Tea might arrive with cakes, delicate cups, silver, and conversation arranged like flowers. In humbler rooms, it might be strong, plain, and practical, taken with bread or a biscuit, sometimes standing up, sometimes beside a fire, sometimes in the short pause between one kind of labour and another. Either way, the drink did something larger than warm the mouth. It marked a pause. It made time feel held. You're inside such a pause now. The city outside is still moving, and you know it. Men are unloading goods under wet tarpaulins. Women are hurrying home with baskets under shawls. Clerks are returning to offices after errands, their cuffs damp, their tempers privately adjusted downward. Children are being warned away from gutters. Horses are enduring humanity with long-suffering eyes. But for you, this moment has narrowed to cup, hand, table, rain, and the slow loosening of cold from the body. There is a quiet comedy in the size of the tray. It is not much. A cup, a pot if the house is generous, a chipped saucer, perhaps a knife, perhaps not enough butter to make anyone reckless. Yet you feel almost luxurious, because luxury is sometimes less about abundance than about permission. You're allowed to sit. You're allowed to eat slowly. You are allowed to stop looking respectable for a few minutes and simply be a warm animal in a small room. A curious little morsel from the period is that tea could be both praised as a civilizing domestic comfort and criticized by some commentators who worried that the poor spent too much on it, or that strong tea replaced more nourishing food. Victorian moral opinion had a remarkable talent for entering even the teacup. It could look at a tired person holding a warm drink and ask whether they were doing comfort correctly. You, sensibly, take another sip. The cup has a small crack near the handle, stained brown by use. The saucer does not match it. The spoon, if present, is thin and light, and gives a little metallic tick when it touches the china. These tiny sounds settle into the room spoon. Rain, coal, breath. They are not silence, but they are gentle enough to let thought drift. The grey afternoon presses against the window, and the fire answers with an amber pulse. You notice the steam from the tea mingling with the warmer air near the hearth. It curls upward, visible for a moment, then disappears. The room feels damp still, but less hostile. Dampness in London is almost a resident. It lives in walls, carpets, cuffs, bedding, and lungs. You do not defeat it. You persuade it to step back. Tea helps, fire helps, a closed door helps. Bread helps more than pride would like to admit. You lift the cup with both hands and imagine how many similar cups are being lifted across the city at this same hour. In drawing rooms, kitchens, servants' halls, railway refreshment rooms, shops, hospitals, lodging houses, and narrow rooms above crowded streets. People pause with tea while the rain falls. Some drink from porcelain, some from thick mugs, some from cups chipped enough to have biographies. The drink connects them without making their lives equal. That is London. 2. Shared habits, unequal circumstances. Modern researchers still debate how to interpret tea in Victorian working and lower middle class life. Was it mostly a nutritional compromise? A stimulant for long work days? A sign of domestic aspiration? A social ritual? Or an emotional comfort in a city of strain? The sensible answer may be that it was all of these, depending on the hand that held the cup. For you, at this table, it is not an abstract symbol. It is warmth entering the body one swallow at a time. You finish the bread slowly. Crumbs gather near your fingertips. You press them together and eat them too, because waste in this room would feel impolite to history. Your stomach is not full in a grand way, but it is steadier. The slight hollowness of cold walking has softened. Your face feels warmer. Your eyelids begin to understand the direction in which this afternoon is going. The bed waits beside the wall. You look at it with renewed caution. Tea has made you kinder, perhaps too kind. A bed in a rented London room deserves neither blind trust nor melodrama. It requires inspection, negotiation, and a little optimism. The blanket is folded over the top. The sheet, where visible, looks clean enough in the dim light, which is not the same as clean, but we must not be cruel. The pillow has a sunken middle, shaped by other heads, other afternoons, other worries. The mattress may be straw, flock, wool, horsehair, or some mixture of materials depending on the house, the price, and the honesty of whoever last described it. You set down the cup and rise. The room tilts gently around the fire's centre. Your socks are warmer now, though not entirely dry. Your clothes hang in their small domestic arrangement coat over the chair. Gloves on table, scarf near the hearth. Boots angled like obedient dogs. You feel oddly proud of them. They have been rescued from the rain and placed into order. This is the Victorian art of survival at its smallest scale. The tray remains on the table, and you wonder whether it will be collected soon or left until later. Leaving it could invite crumbs, and crumbs invite visitors too small to pay rent. This thought sends your eyes to the skirting board. Nothing moves. Good. Still, you brush the crumbs from the table into your palm and dispose of them as best you can. A person planning to nap in 1884 should not openly encourage the local wildlife. The rain grows softer again, almost feathery. The sky outside darkens, though it is not yet true evening. The window glass reflects the room faintly, so that your own figure appears over the blurred street, a tired body, loosened by tea, standing between fire and bed. For a moment, you seem doubled. One self inside the warm room, another still out there in the wet city, walking past shop fronts and puddles, searching for this very place. You turn from the window and approach the bed. One hand reaches for the blanket. The fabric feels coarse, warm only where the room has touched it. You lift it slowly, listening to the small rustle of linen beneath. Sleep is close now, but before you enter it, you must decide what kind of comfort this bed can offer, and what small surprises it may be hiding under its respectable cover. You lift the blanket with the care of someone opening a letter that may contain either good news or an insect. The fabric rises in a heavy fold, rough beneath your fingers, holding the room's mild warmth and a faint smell of laundering. Storage, coal smoke, and other people's sleep. It is not an unpleasant smell, exactly. It is simply honest. Beds in rented rooms do not smell like fresh lavender fields unless someone is trying very hard to sell you something. The sheet underneath is pale, a little worn and cool to the touch. You smooth your hand across it and feel tiny irregularities in the weave. Linen and cotton have their own textures, and in this dim afternoon room, the sheet seems less like a cloud and more like a practical agreement. It will cover you. You will not ask too many questions. Everyone remains civil. Still, questions arise. You lean closer, because a person sleeping in London in 1884 must not be naive. The bed may be clean. It may be clean enough. It may be clean only in the moral imagination of the landlady. You inspect the seams, the pillow edge, the fold where sheet meets mattress. Your eyes search for stains, specks, movement. Anything too lively for comfort. Nothing obvious appears. This is encouraging, though not conclusive. Victorian bedding has secrets, and some secrets are smaller than a pinhead. One well-established reality of 19th century urban accommodation is that beds were often among the most valuable and most contested pieces of household furniture. A proper bed, with mattress, frame, bedding, and blankets represented money, care, and status. In poorer lodgings, beds might be shared, rented by the night, reused constantly, or placed in rooms where air, washing, and space were limited. For a tired person, a bed promised rest. For reformers and inspectors, it often revealed class, crowding, hygiene, and the private struggles of city life. You press lightly on the mattress. It yields unevenly, not dramatically, but enough to suggest a life rich in previous occupants. Perhaps it is stuffed with horsehair, flock, wool, draw, or some layered combination that has settled into ridges and hollows. Modern foam is not coming to rescue you. The mattress has no interest in ergonomic science. It offers a slope here, a lump there, a soft depression in the middle that may gently guide your body toward the wall. You consider this and decide that tiredness is the greatest mattress topper ever invented. At the head of the bed lies the pillow. It is thin, but not hopeless. You pat it once, and a faint puff of dusty fabric smell rises. Feathers would be better, if clean and properly filled. Cheaper stuffing might flatten quickly. You turn it over, seeking the cooler side, then realize the entire pillow is cool because the room has not yet fully warmed it. The fire is too far away to bless everything at once. Heat travels slowly here, like gossip through a respectable household. Near the foot of the bed is an extra blanket folded with surprising neatness. You unfold it halfway. The weave is coarse, but it has weight. And weight is comfort on a rainy afternoon. Heavy blankets press the body into stillness. They say, perhaps not softly, but convincingly, stay. You imagine pulling it over your legs while rain taps the window and the fire mutters in the grate. Your eyelids approve of this plan. A small oddity of this period is that bed-warming pans, hot bricks, and hot water bottles were part of the wider culture of warming beds before sleep. Though their use depended on household resources and habits. A warming pan could be filled with hot coals and passed between sheets, but it required care, because nothing ruins a cosy nap like setting the bedding smouldering. Hot bricks wrapped in cloth were humbler, less elegant, and probably less likely to look impressive in a painting. But they did the job. Comfort often arrived in practical disguises. You have no warming pan here, unless the landlady has hidden one out of reach like a treasure. So the bed must be warmed by your own body, which feels slightly unfair. The first minutes will be cold. The sheet will touch your ankles with that chilly little shock that makes every person, in every century, question their decisions, but after that, slowly, warmth will gather beneath the blankets. Your body will become the hearth of its own tiny climate. Before committing, you check the bed frame. It is wooden or iron, depending on the room's fortunes. Iron bedsteads became increasingly common in the 19th century and were sometimes praised for being easier to clean than older wooden frames, especially in the ongoing human war against bedbugs. If this bed is iron, you give it a little silent nod of approval. If it is wood, you do not panic. You merely become more philosophical. The bed stands close to the wall, too close, perhaps. The wallpaper beside it is rubbed and faintly darkened where bodies, pillows, and blankets have touched over time. Near the baseboard, the room's shadows thicken. You decide not to stare too long. A rented room rewards reasonable inspection but punishes obsession. At some point, you must trust the arrangement or go back into the rain, and the rain has made no persuasive argument. Writers who examine Victorian housing still disagree about how to balance the evidence of discomfort against the evidence of domestic pride. Public reports often describe dirty bedding, crowded sleeping rooms, and poor ventilation with grim urgency. Yet many ordinary people worked hard to keep beds aired, sheets washed, blankets mended, and sleeping spaces respectable within severe limits. Both pictures belong to the same city. In this room, the bed is not spotless luxury, but neither is it pure misery. It is an effort, a tired, imperfect, human effort. You pull the blanket down a little farther. The sheet beneath has been tucked tightly, perhaps by habit, perhaps by someone who believes tight corners are a defense against moral decline. You loosen it carefully at the side so you can slide in later, without wrestling the bed like a trapped animal. The fabric makes a dry whisper. The sound is small, intimate, almost soothing. You glance toward your boots again. They are drying obediently, though one still looks suspiciously damp at the seam. The gloves have begun to lose their limp shine. The coat remains heavy over the chair, steaming no longer, but still holding a dark wetness along the hem. You will not be fully dry when you sleep. That is simply the truth. The room has improved your situation, not transformed you into a laundry miracle. The fire shifts and drops a little coal inward. A red glow opens, then dims. You consider whether to add more fuel. If coal has been provided, every lump feels like a coin becoming heat. If coal is not included generously, you may hesitate. Calculating how long the room must remain warm, afternoon sleep requires enough fire to soften the air, but not so much that you wake to a stuffy, smoky room or a stern complaint about waste. Even coziness has accounting. You choose moderation, a small adjustment, nothing reckless, the poker, if there is one, is cool at the handle and blackened at the end. You stir the fire gently and it answers with a little glow, as if grateful for attention. Smoke shifts upward. You watch to make sure it draws properly. The chimney does its work well enough, though a faint smoky edge lingers in the air. Your eyes sting only slightly. In Victorian London, that may count as excellent ventilation. Now the bed looks ready, or as ready as it will become. You sit on the edge and feel the mattress accept you with a soft, uneven sigh. The frame creaks, not loudly, but enough to announce that it has noticed your arrival. You pause, listening for footsteps outside, for any sign that the house objects. Nothing. Only rain, fire. A muffled voice below, and your own slow breathing. You lift your feet and test the sheet with your toes. Cold. Of course, you knew this would happen, and yet the body always takes it personally. You draw back for a moment, then try again, braver this time. The chill travels up your legs and then begins, almost immediately, to fade under the blanket's weight. Your shoulders lower, your spine, which has been negotiating with damp streets and hard chairs all afternoon, begins to consider forgiveness. You arrange the pillow, pull the blanket higher, and leave enough space near your face for air that does not taste entirely of coal. The room tilts towards sleep. Rain continues at the window, steady and fine. Somewhere downstairs, crockery clicks. Someone coughs, then falls quiet. The city is close but softened. The bed may not be perfect, it may not even be especially good, but it is horizontal, enclosed. Warmer by the minute and yours for now. You lie still, letting the first layer of warmth form around you. The blanket settles. The mattress remembers its hollows. The afternoon gathers at the edge of your mind, dim and grey and full of water. Soon, the room sounds will begin to shape themselves into a lullaby. But first, you must learn how to rest while dressed just enough for propriety, undressed just enough for comfort, and surrounded by the careful little arrangements of a Victorian nap. You lie there for a few moments without fully committing to sleep, because the body must first settle its treaty with clothing. The bed is beginning to warm beneath you, yet every layer you still wear makes itself known. A collar presses, a waistband holds, a sleeve twists slightly under one shoulder. A damp stocking clings with the emotional neediness of a person who's been ignored at a party. Comfort is near, but it's not automatic. In 1884, getting comfortable for an afternoon nap is not as simple as rolling into bed in soft modern clothes and trusting elastic to understand you. Victorian dress is built from structure, fastenings, layers, habits, and expectations. Clothing shapes how you stand, how you sit, how you breathe, and how carefully you must undress when the room is not quite your own. You are private, yes, but not private in the modern hotel sense. The door has a latch, not a magic spell. A knock may come, a servant may enter, the landlady may remember some rule she has not yet delivered. Respectability hovers near the ceiling like coal smoke. So you make careful choices. You loosen what can be loosened: a collar, a cravat, a waistcoat button, a bodice fastening, a belt or waistband, perhaps stays, if you wear them. Though removing them fully in a rented room during a brief afternoon rest may feel too exposed, too troublesome, or simply too much work. If you wear a corset, it reminds you that comfort has been historically negotiable, especially for women. You might loosen it slightly, enough to let the ribs expand, enough that breathing becomes less like politely asking permission. The relief is immediate and almost embarrassing. Your lungs seem grateful. One reliable point about Victorian clothing is that many people wore multiple layers, and those layers differed sharply by gender, class, season, and activity. Women's dress could include chemise, drawers, corset, petticoats, dress, stockings, boots, and outerwear. Men's clothing might involve shirt, drawers, trousers, waistcoat, coat, collar, tie or cravat. Cravat, stockings or socks, and boots. These layers offered warmth, modesty, structure, and status, but they also made rest a small operation. To sleep, even briefly, you had to decide which parts of society could be unfastened. You smile faintly at that thought. Society has many buttons. The room remains dim. Rain patterns move across the window glass, and the fire gives a soft, low pulse. The bed has a shallow hollow that draws you slightly toward the middle. You shift carefully, trying to keep the blanket over you while freeing a trapped fold beneath your hip. The mattress creaks. The frame answers. Somewhere beyond the wall, another board creaks in sympathy, or perhaps accusation. You freeze for a second, then relax when no one responds. The house is full of noises. Yours is only one more small entry in the register. A curious fragment from daily life is that many Victorians used specialised nightwear, but daytime napping in temporary lodgings did not always allow the full ritual of changing. Nightshirts, night dresses, caps, wrappers, dressing gowns, and shawls all had their places, especially in more settled households. But you, resting on a rainy afternoon away from home, must improvise between modesty and comfort. You may remove the outer coat and boots, loosen tight garments, and keep enough clothing on to answer the door without causing a moral weather event. That is the key. One must avoid a moral weather event. You pull the blanket higher over your chest and feel its weight settle through your clothes. It is scratchy at the edge, so you fold the sheet over it to protect your skin. The sheet is still cool near your shoulder, but the space around your legs is warming. Dampness retreats slowly. The stocking that bothered you begins to feel less clammy, though not truly dry. Your toes flex beneath the blanket, testing the pocket of warmth they have created. It is not luxurious, but it is yours. The fire gives a tiny pop. You open your eyes. All remains well. Your coat hangs on the chair, its shape strange in the half-light, like a second person sitting quietly with poor posture. The gloves lie near the cup. The boots stand in their careful position. The room has become an arrangement of your temporary self, each object telling the story of arrival, reign, and gradual surrender. You wonder what it would mean to be fully at ease here, to be at home in a permanent room. Perhaps you would have a proper nightdress folded nearby, slippers waiting, a familiar towel, a bed whose noises you recognized. You would know which floorboard complains, which draft under the door is harmless, which part of the mattress has the least rebellion. But in this lodging room, everything is slightly unknown. You must rest without belonging. There is a sadness in that, but also a strange freedom. For a few hours, you are nobody's permanent furniture. Students of Victorian social life continue to discuss how much clothing functioned as protection, identity, discipline, or constraint. Some emphasize the way garments signaled class and respectability in public. Others look more closely at the body inside the clothing, the heat, weight, pressure, laundering, repair, and the daily skill required to manage it all as you lie under the blanket. One button loosened and one sleeve still annoying you. The discussion feels less abstract. Clothes are not merely symbols, they touch the skin, they shape sleep. You shift again, slowly, and free the sleeve at last. A small victory, the kind no monument records, although perhaps it should. The shoulder relaxes into the mattress, your head sinks into the thin pillow. The pillow is not generous, but after the chair, it feels persuasive. You turn it slightly and find a cooler, smoother patch. Then you tuck one hand beneath your cheek and immediately remove it because your fingers are still a little cold. Better to keep both hands under the blanket, folded near the chest where warmth can gather. The rain strengthens for a minute, striking the window in sharper taps. It sounds almost like fingers drumming on glass. You listen, not with alarm, but with a heavy, growing pleasure. The best rainy afternoon sleep is made from contrast wet street and dry bed, cold boots and warm tea, public noise and private stillness, the world continuing while you do nothing at all. It is not laziness. It is restoration. You may tell yourself this with confidence, especially if anyone asks. A cart rolls below, wheels grinding through puddles, a horse snorts, someone calls out, the words broken by rain and glass. The sound passes, and the room closes again. Your breathing begins to follow the weather's rhythm. Inhale with the hush, exhale with the fire. The blanket grows warmer over your knees. Your loosened clothing no longer feels like a cage, only a soft reminder of where and when you are. Still, you remain careful. You have not undressed too far. You have not abandoned propriety. If a knock comes, you can rise, smooth yourself, and answer in a state the century might tolerate. This knowledge lets you relax more deeply. Strange, perhaps, but true. Safety in this room is not only about warmth and a latch. It's about being prepared to appear respectable at short notice. Victorian comfort often keeps one hand on its collar. Your eyelids lower. The room blurs, fire glow, dark coat, pale washie stand, grey window, folded blanket edge. The tea warmth lingers in your stomach. The bread rests there too, simple and steady. Your body, at last, begins to believe the rain is no longer your problem, and just as sleep comes nearer, the world beyond the window grows more detailed in sound, as if London itself is leaning close to whisper you under. London does not become quiet for your sake. It never promised that. Even as you lie beneath the blanket, slowly warming the chilled places in your legs and shoulders, the city continues outside the window with the stubborn energy of a creature too large to sleep all at once. Yet the sounds are changed now. They no longer strike you directly in the face with rain and mud. They arrive filtered through glass, curtains, walls, distance, and drowsiness. The city becomes a lullaby made by accident. Rain is the nearest sound. It taps on the pane, slides down the glass, spills from the gutter, and lands somewhere below in a repeating splash. Each drop seems separate at first. Then all of them blend into a soft grey surface. You can almost feel the rain's pattern without looking. A light scatter when the wind shifts. A fuller rush when water empties from the roof. A delicate ticking where drops hit the sill. It is not silence, but it is steady enough for sleep. Beyond the rain, hoofbeats pass along the street. One horse moves slowly, hooves heavy and patient, pulling a cab or cart through the wet afternoon. Another comes faster, iron shoes striking stone with a sharper rhythm. The wheels answer in grinding circles. Puddles break beneath them with soft splashes. The sound fades, returns, fades again. You begin to learn the difference between a cab, a delivery cart, and a heavier wagon without ever opening your eyes. London teaches by noise. One practical truth about London in the 1880s is that horse-drawn traffic dominated the streets before motor vehicles transformed urban sound. Cabs, omnibuses, carts, private carriages, delivery wagons, and working horses created a constant mixture of hoofbeats, wheels, harnesses, shouts, bells, and stable smells. A rainy afternoon softened some sounds but sharpened others, especially the hiss of wheels through water and the slap of hooves on wet stone. To sleep in the city was not to escape traffic, it was to drift around it. A bell rings somewhere down the street, not a church bell, perhaps, but a smaller bell, brief and practical. A shop door, a cart signal, a vendor. The sound appears and disappears before your mind can attach meaning to it. Then comes a human voice, blurred by weather, a street seller calling out goods, maybe fruit, maybe fish, maybe something hot and comforting that your sleepy imagination instantly improves beyond historical accuracy. The words stretch and break in the damp air. You hear tone more than meaning. The room around you receives these sounds like a wooden box receives music. Floorboards carry footsteps from the corridor. A murmur rises from below, two voices in conversation, one lower, one sharper. Crockery clicks. A door closes with a soft thud. Someone coughs again, the same lingering cough from earlier, or another cough entirely, because Victorian houses are generous providers of respiratory atmosphere. The cough travels through the wall, pauses, resumes, then sinks away. You remain still, listening. There is a kind of intimacy in hearing other lives while unseen yourself. You do not know the people beyond your door, yet their movement shape your rest. The landlady's shoes have a firm, managerial sound. A servant's steps are quicker, lighter, more hurried. A male lodger may cross the landing with heavier tread, then stop, perhaps fumbling for a key or match. Somewhere a child is hushed. The hush itself is louder than the child was. You smile faintly in the pillow. One strange little detail from Victorian street life is that London had a rich culture of cries, calls, and recognisable urban sounds, even as reform, policing, and changing commerce altered the streets. Many residents still identified sellers and services by voice, rhythm, or bell. The city could be read by ear. A knife grinder, muffin seller, milk carrier, cabman, flower seller, or costermonger might announce themselves before they appeared. Of course, through rain and a lodging-house window, everything becomes more mysterious. A man selling onions may sound like a ghost offering philosophy. You shift your head slightly on the pillow. The fabric scratches your cheek, but not badly. The blanket has warmed. Your feet, those two betrayed citizens of the rain, are finally less cold. The room feels closer now, as if the sounds outside press it gently inward. Fire, rain, hoofbeats, voices. Each layer places you more deeply inside the afternoon. The fire has its own speech. Coal does not burn like wood. It glows, settles, collapses inward, breathes through red cracks, and occasionally gives a small click or pop, as if adjusting its thoughts. A faint draught moves toward the chimney. You can hear it when the room grows still. A low pull of air, not quite a whistle. The fireplace is both comfort and appetite. It consumes coal, pulls air, leaves ash, and asks to be watched. For now it behaves. You're grateful. People who study Victorian urban experience still debate how residents adapted psychologically to constant noise. Some argue that the industrial and commercial city produced real strain, disturbed sleep, and sensory fatigue. Others suggest that many Londoners developed familiarity with local soundscapes, learning which noises mattered and which could be ignored. Lying here, you understand both possibilities. A sudden shout might wake you. A known cart might soothe you. Noise becomes threatening or comforting depending on whether it belongs. You begin to sort the sounds into safe and not safe, close and far, ordinary and uncertain, rain safe, fire safe, provided it stays in the grate like a civilized element. Footsteps in corridor ordinary, unless they stop outside your door. Wheels below far. Raised voices possibly interesting, but not your business. That last category, not your business, is essential for sleeping in crowded housing. Without it, no one would ever rest. A gust of wind presses rain harder against the window. The curtains stir faintly. Cold air slips near the frame and touches your face. You draw the blanket closer, leaving a small space for breathing. The contrast is delicious in its modest way. Cool air at the nose, warmth under the covers, rain outside, tea inside. The city has not become comfortable exactly. You have created a pocket of comfort within it. Somewhere outside, an omnibus passes, or at least you imagine one from the weight and rhythm of the wheels. The sound is broader, more crowded, with voices attached to it. Passengers tucked inside, damp coats touching damp coats. Windows fogged, conductor calling, Horse teams working through the wet street. Perhaps someone aboard is going home to supper. Perhaps someone is going to work an evening shift. Perhaps someone is staring through the rain at the same lodging house window without knowing you are behind it, half asleep and wrapped like a parcel. The thought floats away. Your hearing grows soft at the edges. Sounds no longer arrive as separate events. They blend into a moving fabric rain. Hoof, wheel, cough, coal, pipe, voice, splash. The afternoon becomes a loom, weaving London around your bed. You are not separate from the city. You are tucked inside one of its rooms, borrowing warmth from coal, stillness from a closed door, and rhythm from everything that refuses to stop moving. Then, just as sleep nearly takes you, a louder clatter rises from the street below. A cart jolts over a rough patch. Iron rims striking stone. Harness bells shaking wildly. Your eyes open for 1 second. The room sharpens window. Washstand, coat on chair, fire low and red. The sound passes. No danger, only London being London, which is often inconvenient but rarely apologetic. Your eyelids lower again. The rain resumes command of the afternoon. Your breathing returns to its slower pace. The bed is warmer now, shaped around you, and the city's many noises begin to loosen their meanings until they are only texture, only weather, only the great restless murmur outside the small warm room. The fire has settled into a lower glow while you drift at the edge of sleep. It no longer throws lively light across the room. Instead, it pulses quietly in the grate, red beneath black, like a tired heart still doing its work. The rain keeps falling at the window, and the room has reached that soft middle state between warmth and chill, comfort and caution, where everything feels cozy as long as you do not inspect it too closely. You lie under the blanket with your face turned slightly toward the fireplace. The heat reaches you in uneven waves. Your knees are warm, your shoulder nearest the room is cooler, your toes have improved. But one heel still remembers the street with unnecessary loyalty. The sheet has lost its first cold bite. The mattress has accepted your shape, or perhaps you have accepted its shape. Either way, peace has been negotiated. Coal is the quiet servant of this small peace, not a gentle servant. Exactly. Coal is too dirty, smoky, and stubborn for that. It is more like a grumbling old worker in the corner who keeps the room alive while leaving fingerprints on everything. Its heat is dense and lasting. Its smoke has already darkened chimneys, ceilings, curtains, lungs, and the sky over London. Yet on a rainy afternoon, when your clothes are damp and your body is tired, moral objections to coal become slightly less energetic. Warmth is persuasive. By the 1380s, coal fires were central to heating many London homes and rooms, and the city's dependence on coal shaped daily comfort as well as air quality. Coal-heated rooms, boiled water, cooked food, dried clothes, and made winter and wet weather more bearable. But it also contributed to smoke, soot, dirty interiors, and unhealthy air. Your little fire is therefore not a simple blessing. It is a bargain glowing red in a grate. You breathe in and notice the bargain. The air has a smoky edge, not overwhelming, but present. It lies behind the smell of tea, wet wool, and old bedding. If the chimney draws well, most smoke escapes upward. If it draws poorly, the room may haze and sting your eyes, even now. A faint thread of irritation touches your throat. You swallow and shift your head nearer the pillow's edge, seeking a cleaner pocket of air. Victorian coziness often arrives with a cough tucked discreetly inside it. The fireplace itself is small, blackened, and practical. The grate holds the coal above ash. The mantel shows tiny marks from years of use, a scorch here, a scratch there, a pale ring where some object sat for too long. A poker leans nearby. Perhaps there is a small shovel, perhaps tongs, perhaps only whatever the house provides to those who have not paid for elegance. The tools look simple, but they belong to an old domestic choreography. Stir the fire, watch the sparks, mind the draft, save the coal. Do not let the room go cold. Do not burn the house down, a relaxing little checklist. A less familiar detail is that Victorian concern about fire safety was woven into ordinary household advice. Curtains, loose garments, drying clothes, candles, coal embers, and overloaded grates were all potential hazards in cramped rooms. Women's skirts and children's nightclothes were especially vulnerable near open flames. The danger was not cinematic every minute, but it was real enough that people developed constant little habits of caution. Keep fabric back, use a guard if you have one. Never trust a spark simply because it looks charming. You look toward your coat on the chair. It is far enough from the hearth, but you still measure the distance with your eyes. The scarf is safe. The gloves are safe. The boots are probably safe. Though one boot has leaned inward in a way you do not entirely respect. You consider rising to move it, but the blanket has become warm, and warmth has made a convincing legal case against movement. For now, you watch, the boot behaves. The room darkens slightly as the fire settles again. Rain makes the window shine grey. You can see faint reflections in the glass, the bed, the chair, your own face half hidden by the blanket. The firelight flickers over the ceiling, revealing uneven plaster and smoke staining near the chimney breast. In a richer house, servants might tend the fire with quiet efficiency. In this room, you and the fire maintain a more direct relationship. It warms you. You keep an eye on it. Neither side makes extravagant promises. There is another hidden concern less visible than sparks. Air. A closed room with a coal fire needs a proper draft. Too little ventilation can make the room stuffy, smoky, and unsafe. Victorians understood bad air in various ways, often speaking of foul smells, miasma, ventilation, and the need for fresh air. Even if modern scientific explanations were still developing and changing, you do not need a textbook to sense the issue. Your nose knows, your throat knows. The room is warm, but it is not fresh. Experts have long discussed how Victorian ideas about air, health, and domestic comfort changed during the 19th century. Some interpretations emphasize older beliefs about miasma and foul odours, while others stress the growing influence of sanitary science, ventilation reform, and medical attention to overcrowded interiors. For an ordinary tired person, the debate becomes very practical. Does the room smell bad? Does the fire smoke? Can the window open without letting in rain and cold? Will sleep feel restorative? Or will you wake with a headache and a mouth like soot-flavoured wool? You lift your head a little and study the window. Opening it would invite cold, damp air, perhaps even rain if the angle is wrong. Leaving it closed preserves warmth but traps the room's heaviness. A tiny gap might be ideal if the sash cooperates. Victorian windows, like Victorian social rules, do not always cooperate. You decide to leave it for now. Since the room is not smoky enough to force action, still, you remain aware of the air as something you share with the fire. Every breath is part of the same arrangement. The fire gives a small collapse, a soft inward fall of coal. A brighter glow opens. For a moment, the room warms more strongly. Your hands under the blanket relax. Your face feels drier. The damp threads in your clothing lose their chill. This is why people forgive coal so much. It takes the wet misery of an afternoon and turns it into something almost tender. A red glow, a drying sleeve, a cup that stays warm a little longer near the hearth, a bed that no longer feels like a stone slab wearing linen. Outside, the rain speaks in a steady hush. Inside, the coal answers with its deeper, slower language. You lie between them, held by water and fire, by the city's dampness and the room's resistance to it. There is poetry in that, though if you said so aloud, the landlady might charge extra for sentiment. Your eyelids grow heavy again. The caution does not disappear, but it softens. You have checked the clothing, you have watched the sparks, the chimney is drawing well enough, The boots remain loyal to safety. The room is imperfect, smoky, close, and blessedly warm. Sleep returns, not as a sudden fall, but as a thickening of the air around your thoughts. The last thing you notice before drifting lower is the faint red pulse behind your closed eyelids. Firelight passing through darkness, while rain taps on London's roofs as if counting every sleeper one by one. The firelight fades behind your eyelids, and for several long breaths you seem almost asleep, not fully gone, not yet. You are in that narrow borderland where the body is heavy but the ear remains awake, where thoughts loosen their edges and the room begins to mix with dream. Rain, coal, blanket, pillow, and distant wheels all blur together. Then a floorboard creaks outside your door. Your eyes open. The sound is ordinary. You know this. The house is full of ordinary sounds. Yet when you are lying in a rented room, partly undressed, wrapped in a blanket that has known more people than you care to imagine, every nearby noise feels suddenly personal. The floorboard creaks again, slower this time. Someone is crossing the landing. A pause follows. Not outside your door, thankfully. A few steps more. A latch clicks somewhere else. A door opens, then closes with soft restraint. You exhale. Privacy in this room is real enough to be comforting and fragile enough to remain interesting. The door separates you from the corridor. The walls separate you from your neighbours. The floor separates you from the room below. But none of these separations are absolute. Sound passes through them with ease. Smells pass too. Heat, cold, smoke, gossip, suspicion. All of them find little roots through a house like this. Victorian privacy is not a sealed chamber. It is a polite agreement made of plaster, wood, fabric, and mutual pretending. In a city as crowded as London, many ordinary residents lived in close quarters, and rented rooms often placed unrelated people within hearing distance of one another. Lodging houses, boarding houses, subdivided homes, and crowded tenements all required daily negotiation of shared passages, stairs, water, fires, privies, kitchens, and noise for a lodger. The closed door mattered deeply, but it did not erase the building around it. You could be alone and still surrounded. That is the particular intimacy of urban life. You lie still and listen. Below, someone moves a chair. The legs drag across boards with a low scrape. A woman's voice says something brief. Too muffled to understand, a man answers, perhaps from the front room, perhaps from the hall. Then there is a little burst of laughter, quickly suppressed. The sound reaches you softened by layers, like a memory belonging to someone else. A chamber pot shifts somewhere nearby. You know the sound before you want to know it. A faint ceramic scrape, a careful step. A door open quietly. In this world, bodily privacy is handled with ritual, timing, and selective deafness. Water closets exist in some places by the 1880s, especially in better houses, but many lodgings still depend on shared facilities, outdoor privies, chamber pots, and arrangements that modern comfort would prefer not to visualize at bedtime. So we shall visualize gently, then move on with dignity. A small but revealing detail from everyday domestic life is that chamber pots were often kept under beds or inside washstands, and their use required an entire etiquette of concealment and disposal. The object was ordinary, necessary, and embarrassing only if noticed too much. In crowded houses, everyone knew such things existed, yet civilized life depended on acting as though one did not hear every ceramic clue from the next room. Human dignity has always relied on strategic ignorance. The rain helps. It covers small sounds, it softens footsteps and blurs voices. It gives everyone in the house a shared curtain of noise. Without it, the coughs, movements, and whispers might feel sharper. With it, they become part of the afternoon's hush. You begin to appreciate the rain not simply as weather, but as privacy falling from the sky. Still, the walls speak. From one side comes a faint rhythm, perhaps someone brushing clothing, perhaps a person folding laundry, perhaps a restless hand tapping a table. From the other comes the low murmur of a conversation carried through plaster. You cannot make out the words, which is fortunate. Half-heard speech invites imagination, and imagination is a terrible landlord. It invents disputes, secrets, romance, unpaid bills, and possibly murder, when the truth may be only someone asking where the matches have gone. You turn carefully under the blanket, trying not to make the bed frame complain. It complains anyway. A short creak, not loud but distinct. You freeze again, absurdly, as if the entire house has been waiting to judge your mattress technique. No response comes. The neighbour continues murmuring, the rain continues, you relax. This is how one learns to sleep in close quarters, by accepting that you will hear and be heard, but not always interpreted. Your sneeze may travel through the wall. Your footsteps may identify you. Your kettle, if you had one, would reveal your habits. Privacy becomes less about silence and more about boundaries of attention. You do not listen too deliberately. Others do not listen too deliberately to you. Everyone survives by granting one another a little fog. Scholars of Victorian domestic space have offered different readings of this fragile privacy. Some see crowded housing as a source of surveillance, moral pressure, and loss of independence, especially for women, servants, and poorer lodgers. Others point out that shared buildings could also create informal support, familiarity, protection, and small communities of mutual awareness. In the room where you lie now, both possibilities breathe through the walls. A neighbour might be intrusive, and a neighbour might also hear if you fall ill, cry out, or need help. Thin walls expose you, but they do not only expose. A smell of cooking rises faintly from below, onion perhaps, or broth, or something fried in fat that has already worked a long day. It mingles with coal smoke and damp fabric. Your stomach notices. Even after tea and bread, evening is approaching somewhere in the house. Though outside the afternoon still drips along the panes. Kitchens mark time differently from clocks. When food smells climb the stairs, the day has shifted. The building seems to gather more life as the rain continues. A door opens downstairs, and with it comes a brief rush of colder air and street noise wheels. A voice rain striking the threshold. Someone enters, shaking water from a coat. The landlady speaks, coins perhaps change hands, boots strike the mat. Another person has crossed from weather into shelter. You remember your own arrival and feel a sleepy sympathy for the dripping stranger. May their boots be treated wisely. The newcomer's steps climb part way, then stop on another floor. A door opens, a cough, a sigh. The house absorbs them. London is made of such absorptions. One wet body after another tucked into rooms. Beds, corners, kitchens, attics, cellars, and back chambers. The city looks vast from the street, but from inside a lodging house, it becomes stacked breaths. You draw the blanket closer to your chin. The fabric smells warmer now. Less strange. Your body has begun to lend itself to the bed, and the bed has begun to lend itself to you. That is how temporary comfort forms. Not trust exactly, familiarity. Rain thickens again against the window. Its sound fills the small gaps between voices. Your thoughts drift toward the people around you, each hidden in their own narrow space. The man with the newspaper downstairs, the child at the stair rail, the landlady keeping accounts in her head, the servant carrying trays, the unknown lodger beyond the wall, perhaps resting too, perhaps listening to your bed frame and judging it as unfairly as you judge the chamber pot. A gentle sarcasm rises in your tired mind. Here you are, in the capital of the British Empire, centre of commerce, politics, literature, finance, and world-shaping ambition. And the great question of the afternoon is whether the person next door can hear you turning over. History is humbling when it is honest. The room settles again. The voice is lower. The footsteps fade. The fire glows quietly. The rain gives you back that soft cover of sound. You close your eyes, no longer expecting perfect privacy. Only enough. Enough wall. Enough door. Enough blanket. Enough rain. Sleep approaches through all these imperfect barriers, moving patiently toward you, while the house breathes around your bed. Sleep does not take you all at once, it arrives in small permissions. First your hands grow heavy beneath the blanket, then your jaw loosens, then the sounds from the corridor stop asking to be understood. The rain, which has been tapping at the window with such patient insistence, becomes less like weather and more like breath. A long breath over roofs, chimneys, gutters and alleys. London breathing in grey. You are still aware of the room, but only softly. The fire is a red blur behind your closed lids. The blanket presses across your chest and knees. The pillow holds your head in its thin, imperfect way. Your loosened clothing no longer feels awkward, only present. The way a hand resting on your shoulder might be present. You are warm enough now to stop measuring warmth. That is when drowsiness deepens, and yet the sleep is not entirely easy. It has little ridges in it, like the mattress. The room is unfamiliar. The air is smoky. The bed has a history. The house has voices. Your body remembers the wet street even as it lies still. One foot twitches, perhaps dreaming of avoiding a puddle. Your shoulder shifts, trying to find a hollow that does not belong to someone else's shape. Victorian sleep, especially away from home, is often less a clean descent than a series of negotiations with discomfort. A useful piece of 19th century context is that sleep was shaped by household arrangements, work schedules, fuel, light, noise, crowding, health, and class. People did not all retire at the same hour, nor did they all enjoy long, uninterrupted rest. Servants, labourers, parents, travellers, night workers, lodgers, and the ill might sleep in patterns broken by duty, noise, weather, or shared domestic space. The idea of a perfectly private, quiet, climate-controlled bedroom would have seemed like a dream available mainly to the very fortunate. For many, rest was real, but it was fitted around life rather than protected from it. You feel that now. Your afternoon nap is possible, but not pure. It contains the city. A cart passes below and the sound slips into your half-dream as rolling thunder. The cough next door becomes a distant dog bark, then a ship's horn, then nothing at all. The fire shifts, and your mind turns the tiny fall of coal into footsteps on gravel. Rain becomes fingers, beads, seeds, whispers. Your thoughts do not follow straight roads anymore. They wander through damp streets of their own. You see, without quite seeing, the crossing you passed earlier. Brown water gathers between stones. A boy jumps over it, but in the dream he jumps too slowly, as if the air is thickened around him. Umbrellas move past like dark flowers. A horse lowers its wet head. Shop windows glow, each one containing tea, bread, firelight, and someone else's easier life. Then the image folds back into the room, and you are aware again of the blanket against your chin. A peculiar little note from Victorian sleep culture is that advice books and medical writers often warned against sleeping in badly ventilated rooms, under too many covers, or too soon after heavy meals. They also worried over posture, night air, damp bedding, and the moral discipline of regular habits. The Victorians could turn even sleep into a subject requiring improvement somewhere. One imagines a serious gentleman with excellent side whiskers is prepared to tell you that your nap is insufficiently organised. Fortunate he is not in the room. You drift deeper. The room seems to expand and shrink. At moments, the bed feels like a narrow boat, floating through rain, The mattress lifts slightly beneath you, not in reality, but in that loose dream logic that requires no permission. The window becomes a river surface. The fire becomes a lamp on a distant quay. You are indoors, yet the whole city moves around you like water. Perhaps this is what a rainy London sleep does. It makes every room feel moored. The smell of coal grows stronger in one dream and becomes the smell of a railway station. Steam, iron, wet wool. Hurry. You're standing under a glass roof, though you know you're still lying down. People pass with trunks and umbrellas. A porter calls out. A whistle shrieks somewhere far away, softened by rain. You search for your room among platforms and find instead the little table with the teacup, still cracked near the handle. The cup sits on the platform like the most reasonable object in an unreasonable whirl. Your body turns slightly. The bed frame creaks. The sound pulls you upward. For a second you hover near waking, aware of the pillow's rough edge and the cool draft near your nose. You do not open your eyes. The room is safe enough. The fire is low but alive. The corridor is quiet. The door remains closed. You let yourself sink again. Specialists in social history and the history of the senses still differ on how we should reconstruct the experience of ordinary sleep in the past. Some warn that modern people may exaggerate discomfort because we compare older rooms to modern conveniences. Others argue that we may understate hardship because people normalized cold, smoke, noise, crowding, and vermin in ways that left fewer emotional traces in the record. Your own half-sleep suggests both sides have a point. You're not miserable. You're not perfectly comfortable. You're simply resting inside conditions that require more tolerance than a modern bedroom asks. The rain helps more than anything. It smooths the edges. It softens the coughs, carts, mutters, and creaks. It makes the room feel enclosed without needing silence. You understand why rainy afternoons invite sleep across centuries. The weather creates a permission to withdraw. Work slows for some, though certainly not for all. Streets become unpleasant enough that staying in feels wise rather than lazy. Light fades early. Sounds blur. The body believes, briefly, that the world has turned down its demands. Your thoughts move to the landlady downstairs in your dream. She is counting coins beside a kettle, but the coins are raindrops, and each one vanishes as she touches it. The child at the stair rail becomes a small shadow with bright eyes, then a cat, then a folded umbrella. The man with the newspaper reads aloud, but the paper contains only weather. Every headline says, "Whoa, rain." Every column says rain. Every advertisement promises a dry bed at a price that changes whenever you blink. You almost laugh, but the laugh dissolves into the breathing. The blanket grows warmer still. The air beneath it becomes your own small climate, made of breath, body heat, wool, linen, and patience. Outside that climate lies the room, and outside the room lies the house, and outside the house lies London. Wet and blackened and alive. You are nested inside layers, skin inside clothing, clothing inside bedding, bedding inside room, room inside house, house inside city, city inside rain. For a while, there is no clear dream, only sensation. A soft weight, a red darkness, a cool thread of air, a distant wheel, the taste of tea lingering faintly in the mouth. You swallow in your sleep. Your hand relaxes open, your shoulder settles into the mattress hollow it resisted earlier. Even the pillow seems kinder now, though that may be exhaustion negotiating on its behalf. Then, somewhere in the street, a vendor calls again, that the sound rises through rain and glass, long and wavering. Your mind receives it as a lullaby, though the vendor is probably trying to sell something practical and has no idea he has become part of your nap. His voice fades. Another wheel passes. A horse snorts. The fire clicks once. You slip below the surface at last. Not into perfect swans, not into modern darkness, into Victorian sleep, smoky, layered, damp at the edges, full of borrowed warmth and half-heard life. The room holds you as best it can. The city continues without apology. Rain moves over the roof, down the window, into the gutter, along the street, and away toward the river, carrying the afternoon with it while you sleep. Sleep carries you deeper, and the room loosens its grip on ordinary shape. The window is still there, the fire is still there. The narrow bed still holds you in its uneven hollow, yet all of it begins to drift. The rain outside becomes wider than the street. It spreads over roofs, chimneys, markets, church, towers, railway arches, warehouses, courts, alleys, and the broad dark back of the Thames. You do not see London now from the pavement. You float through it as a drowsy thought. In the dream, the rain has polished every surface, gas lamps glow in blurred golden circles. Though it is still afternoon and not quite evening, their light melts into the wet air. The stones of the street shine like black glass. A cab rolls past without a driver, then becomes a boat, then becomes a bed on wheels, carrying blankets through puddles with great seriousness. This seems perfectly reasonable while you sleep. Dreams are generous employers of nonsense. You hear the river before you see it. The Thames breathes in the distance, heavy and tidal, carrying barges, ferries, coal, timber, refuse, fog, and the deep working pulse of the city. In 1884, the river is still one of London's great arteries. Even after railways have transformed movement across Britain, goods, passengers, labour, and smells all move along it. The embankments, bridges, docks, and warehouses bind the city to water as surely as the rain binds the afternoon to your window. To sleep in London is to sleep near a river, even when you are streets away from its banks. Your dream places you on a bridge. It may be London Bridge, Blackfriars, Westminster, or some impossible bridge made from all bridges at once. Rain falls softly into the water below. Lamps tremble in the current. The river is not romantic in the clean postcard way. It is dark, busy, practical, and old with human use. Bargemen move through the mist like shadows. A whistle sounds from somewhere downstream. You smell wet rope, coal smoke, mud, tar, and that thick river scent that says the city has been putting things into the water for a very long time and would prefer not to answer questions. Then the bridge becomes the stair landing of the lodging house. The banister is a ship's rail. The wallpaper is fog. The landlady stands at the far end holding not a tray, but a lantern. And she says nothing because dream landladies understand that rent is more frightening when collected silently. You try to ask whether the room includes coal, but your voice comes out as steam. A small oddity from Victorian London's rainy world is that fog, mist, smoke, and rain often blended in popular imagination, producing the famous atmosphere people now picture as almost theatrical. But the atmosphere was not merely picturesque. It came from weather mixing with coal smoke, river damp, industrial emissions, and dense urban life. The soft mystery you dream of had a gritty, sooty sauce. London made romance out of pollution with remarkable confidence. The dream turns, and you are walking again. Though your sleeping body does not move, you pass shop windows bright with lamplight. A baker's window glows. A chemist's coloured bottles shine red and green. A bookseller's display blurs behind rain-streaked glass. A tea shop sends steam across the pane like a ghost practising handwriting. You see people inside each window, each one warm in a separate square of life. They lift cups, fold cloth, count coins, mend gloves, read newspapers, and stare out at the rain with the solemn expression of citizens being personally inconvenienced by the sky. For a moment, you are outside all of them, damp again, searching. Then the blanket presses against your real shoulder, and the dream remembers that you are actually inside. It kindly moves you through the glass. Now you sit in every warm room at once. You are the clerk with wet cuffs, You're the servant swallowing tea too quickly before the bell rings. You're the child tucked beside a fire with cheeks flushed from heat. You're the old woman watching rain bead on the window. You're the traveller counting remaining coins on a small table. You are also yourself, lying in the lodging house. One stocking still faintly damp, which is perhaps the most historically accurate part of the dream. The history of dreaming itself is difficult to grasp, and people who study sleep in past societies often caution that we cannot easily recover the private dream lives of ordinary Victorians. Diaries sometimes mention dreams, medical texts discuss sleep, and literature fills the era with dreamlike scenes. But the actual inner weather of a tired lodger remains largely beyond the record. Some scholars emphasize continuity, arguing that bodies in the past dreamed from the same basic human materials: cold, hunger, sound, memory, fear, comfort. Others focus on difference, suggesting that religious belief, social anxiety, urban noise, gaslight, and industrial modernity shaped the imagery and meaning of sleep. Your dream, full of rain and coal, seems happy to support everyone at once. A bell rings, and suddenly you are inside a railway station. The great roof arches overhead, smoky and dripping. Steam rises from an engine. Passengers hurry beneath umbrellas, though they are already indoors, because dreams are not strict about architecture. Porters roll trunks across wet boards. A woman in black stands beside a pile of luggage, holding a small dog that looks deeply opposed to progress. Somewhere, a clock shows the wrong time. Perhaps all station clocks in dreams show the wrong time. It is their little hobby. The station becomes your room again. The ceiling above you is ribbed like ironwork. The fire is an engine furnace. Your boots stand by the grate like two black locomotives waiting for orders. The cracked teacup sits on the table, impossibly large, full of rainwater instead of tea. You reach for it, and the rainwater is warm. You drink, and it tastes faintly of bread, smoke, and sleep. Outside the dream window, London's real sounds continue their patient work. A wheel jolts, a horse snorts, someone laughs below, but inside sleep. Each sound is translated into images. The jolt becomes a bridge chain. The snort becomes a tugboat. The laugh becomes a bell from a shop door. The mind is a poor historian in some ways, always mixing in sources, but it is an excellent atmosphere maker. You drift above the rooftops. Chimneys rise through the rain in rows, thousands of them, each giving up smoke to the low sky. The city looks endless. Streets twist like dark ribbons. Courtyards hold little puddles of lamplight. Church spires pierce the grey. Railway lines run like wet threads. Somewhere far below, your lodging house is one dim box among many, and your bed is one narrow rectangle inside it. You feel very small, but not lonely. Smallness can be restful when the blanket is warm. The rain begins to fall more slowly in the dream, each drop visible, round and silver. One drop lands on a cab roof and becomes a coin. Another lands in the river and becomes a gas lamp. Another lands on your window and becomes the landlady's knock. Another lands on your blanket and becomes a crumb from the bread. The whole city seems made of repeated tiny things, each one ordinary, each one necessary. Then comes a softer image of the tea tray, the cup, the bread, the careful placing of boots by the fire, your hands held to the heat. These ordinary acts return in the dream not as chores, but as comforts glowing gently in sequence. Arrival, drying, tea, bed, rain, fire, sleep. Your mind repeats them like a lullaby, and the repetition carries you further down. For a few breaths, there is no bridge, no station, no river, no street. Only rain. Not cold rain now, not the rain that soaked your cuffs and found the weakness in your boots, but rain heard from safety. Rain beyond eye, beyond glass. Rain softened by the walls. Rain that belongs to the world while you belong to the bed. It washes the dream almost clean. You turn slightly under the blanket, and the mattress answers with its familiar creak. The dream folds itself around the sound, making it into the groan of a barge against a dock. Then even that fades. London keeps breathing above and around you. Enormous, damp, smoky, crowded, and strangely tender in the distance. You sleep on, carried by the rain toward the dim edge of waking. You rise subtly toward the waking, but not in a clean straight line. Sleep lets you go the way rain leaves a window, in trails, pauses, and little clinging streaks. For a while you're still on the bridge, still above the river, still hearing the groan of a barge against a dock. Then the barge becomes the bed frame. The river becomes the gutter outside. The gas lamps become the low red pulse of coal in the grate. Your own room gathers around you again, one object at a time. First, the pillow. Thin, warm where your cheek has rested, slightly rough along the seam. Then the blanket, heavy across your ribs and legs, holding a pocket of body heat that feels almost luxurious now. Then the sheet, twisted a little near your knees. Then the smell coal smoke, damp wool, cool tea, dust, old wood, and the faint human trace of rented bedding. Then the sound of rain. Still falling, steady and tireless, as if the entire afternoon has been patiently waiting for you to return. You open your eyes. The room is darker than before. Not night, not yet, but the afternoon has deepened into that Victorian grey-brown dimness that makes every object look older than it did an hour ago. The window is a blurred square of wet light. Beyond it, the street has lost detail. Shapes move there, but slowly, softened by rain and distance. A cab passes as a dark mass. An umbrella tilts. A lamp glows in the building opposite. A small amber eye in the gloom. You do not know how long you have slept. That is part of the strange softness of an afternoon nap. It loosens time. You may have slept 20 minutes or 2 hours. The room offers clues, but none are exact. The fire is lower. The tea is cold. The rain has not stopped. Your clothes are drier. Though not dry, your body is warmer, but a little stiff. Outside, the city has shifted towards an evening without asking whether you were ready. In London during the 1880s, public time had become increasingly organised by clocks, railway schedules, factory hours, shop routines, and office work. Yet private experience of time could still feel elastic, especially indoors during bad weather. A rainy afternoon in a dim-rented room could blur the boundaries between rest, illness, idleness, travel delay, and simple exhaustion. The clock might insist on precision, but the body had its own damp and sleepy mathematics. You turn your head toward the little table. The cup sits there with a dark remainder of tea at the bottom. A skin of coldness seems to have settled over the liquid, though you cannot see it clearly. The breadcrumbs you missed earlier, kimchi, have gathered near the edge of the saucer. You feel a tiny, unreasonable guilt about them. Then decide history will survive. The spoon lies sideways, catching the faint light. The tray looks abandoned, like evidence from a quieter life. Your mouth is dry, your throat carries a smoky film. This is not dramatic enough to be alarming, but it is enough to remind you that the fire has shared the room with your lungs while you slept. You swallow. The taste is faintly bitter, like old tea and soot. A modern person might reach for bottled water. You have a jug, a basin, and a decision. You consider sitting up. The first attempt is slow. The blanket resists, or perhaps you do. Your back protests with a small ache from the mattress hollow. Your shoulder feels marked by the seam of your clothing. Your loosened collar has shifted. One sleeve has climbed up your forearm. The nap has restored you. Yes, but not in a glamorous way. Victorian sleep does not always return a person polished. Sometimes it returns you wrinkled, warm and mildly confused, which is still a respectable improvement. You sit at the edge of the bed and let your feet find the floor. The room is cooler near the boards. The air touches your ankles and reminds you that the bed was doing more work than you appreciated. You flex your toes. The stockings are nearly dry. Though one toe remains suspicious, the floorboards feel uneven underfoot. Somewhere below, a chair scrapes. The house has continued living while you were away. A small unexpected detail from 19th century interiors is that dimness itself was part of ordinary life in ways modern eyes can forget. Even with gaslighting common in many urban areas, not every room was brightly lit, and people managed long stretches of grey weather. Soot-darkened windows, heavy curtains, low fires, and limited artificial light, reading, sewing, dressing, and waking all happened in conditions that might feel underlit today. Your eyes adjust because they must. The room does not plan to help much. You look toward your coat. It hangs over the chair, still misshapen but less wet. The fabric has lifted from soaked heaviness into damp fatigue. The gloves have stiffened as they dried. The scarf is warm where it faces the hearth. Your boots look better from a distance, which is often the kindest way to view boots after London rain. You reach down and touch one carefully. The leather is warm on the outside, cooler near the seam, not perfect, better. The fire has burned low enough that the room is beginning to surrender heat back to the damp walls. You can feel the change. Warmth remains near the grate. But farther away the air has a chilled edge. If you were staying through the night, you would need to think about more coal, more blankets, supper, perhaps a candle, perhaps the awkward matter of shared facilities. But for this moment, you are suspended between nap and evening, between having rested and needing to rejoin the world. You stand, slowly, and your clothing settles around you increases. The body after sleep is honest. It reveals every pressure point. Waistband, collar, stocking seam, shoulder fold, the place where the pillow pressed your cheek. You smooth yourself with both hands, restoring not elegance. Exactly. But social possibility. If someone knocked now, you could answer, not magnificently, but acceptably. That is enough for most human situations. A discussion continues among historians of Victorian everyday life about how much we should emphasize discomfort when describing ordinary interiors. It is easy to list the smoke, damp, crowding, poor light, uneven bedding, and lack of modern convenience. Yet doing only that can miss the genuine comfort people made from limited means: the warmed cup, the guarded fire, the folded blanket, the careful drying of boots, the relief of a closed door. Waking here, stiff but calmer, you can feel the balance. The room has not pampered you, it has sheltered you. You cross to the washstand. The basin water is cold and grey from earlier use. The jug holds enough for a rinse, so you pour a little into your hands and touch it to your face. The coolness clears the last river mist from your thoughts. Your skin tightens. A drop runs down your wrist and disappears into your cuff. You pat your face dry, then look at yourself in the dim mirror. The reflection is shadowy, but you see someone who has slept. That alone is an achievement in a city that never quite stops asking for something. Outside, the rain is darker now. The street lamps, where lit, shine through it with halos. The day has moved on. Workers will be returning. Shops will be preparing to close or brighten for evening trade. Kitchens will be stirring. Lodgers will come in with wet shoulders and opinions about the weather. Somewhere a kettle will be filled again. Somewhere a newspaper will be folded. Somewhere a tired person will look at a bed and wonder, as you did, what small creatures, memories, and comforts it contains. You return to the bed and smooth the blanket. Not perfectly, but enough. This too feels like part of the ritual. You have borrowed warmth from this place. You leave it with a little order. The pillow keeps the hollow of your head for a moment before slowly rising. Not fully, but politely. The room watches in its dim way. The rain goes on, and with it comes the sense that evening is not arriving suddenly, but seeping into London through every wet brick, every gutter, every window pane darkened by soot and water. The house begins to announce evening before the sky fully commits to it. You hear it first in the stairs. More footsteps now, some slow and heavy, some quick and irritated, some pausing just long enough to shake rain from a coat or collect breath after the climb. The building, which seemed to hold its voice low while you slept, is filling again with the sounds of return. Doors open, latches click. Floorboards answer. Someone below calls for hot water with a tone suggesting this request has a long and disappointing history. You stand near the bed, still wrapped in the loosened feeling of sleep, and listen as the household gathers itself around you. The room no longer feels like a private island, it feels like one chamber in a vertical village. Every wall touching another life. Your nap has ended, but other people's day is still unfolding. For some, the working hours are finishing. For others, the evening labour is just beginning. Servants, landladies, children, travellers, clerks, and labourers do not move through time in the same way. In a lodging house, their schedules cross like wet boot prints in a narrow hall. A basic feature of Victorian domestic service and lodging life is that much of the comfort experienced by guests or lodgers depended on someone else's labour. Fires had to be laid or tended, water carried, rooms swept, chamber pots emptied, linens washed, coal brought in, trays prepared, boots cleaned, messages answered, and rules enforced. The cosy room is not self-made. It is held together by hands, many of them tired, many of them poorly paid, and most of them expected to remain almost invisible unless something goes wrong. You think of the tray still sitting on the little table, the cooled tea, the crumbs, the cup with its brown line near the crack. It is a small thing, but someone will collect it. Someone carried it up, someone boiled the water, someone washed or will wash the cup. Someone decided how much bread you should receive and how much butter the house could afford to spare. Every little comfort has a backstage, and now, as evening stirs the building, the backstage is becoming audible. A young servant appears in the corridor, or perhaps you only hear her. Light steps, a soft knock on a neighbouring door, a murmur, the clink of crockery. She moves quickly, practised in the narrow geography of the house. She knows which boards creak, which lodger complains, which door sticks, which room smells of damp no matter what is done. Her work is part of the building's rhythm. If she is very young, she may have been sent into service from a family that needed her wages. If older, she may be carrying years of stairs in her knees. An odd little glimpse into domestic employment is that Victorian servants often lived in the same house where they worked, but not with the same comfort as those they served. Even in modest households, servants might sleep in cramped attic rooms, shared spaces, or back rooms, rising early and finishing late. In a lodging house, the line between domestic service and commercial hospitality could be especially busy. The person bringing your tea may have less privacy and rest than you, though you are only renting the room for a few hours. History has a way of placing comfort and unfairness on the same tray. You hear a child again, perhaps the same one who peered from the stair rail earlier. This time the child's voice rises in a whisper that has forgotten how whispering works. A woman shushes them. The shushing is firm but not cruel. The child's steps patter along the hall, then stop near your door. For 1 second, you imagine an eye at the keyhole, then the steps retreat. Children in such houses learn the map of adult privacy in fragments: which rooms are forbidden, which lodgers smile, which ones bark, where warmth gathers, where food might appear, where raincoats drip onto the mat. Downstairs, a door opens to the street. Instantly, the outside floods in rain louder. Wheels nearer, a gust of cold, damp air. The smell of wet wool and mud. A man enters, perhaps a lodger returning from work or a traveller just arrived. His boots strike the mat with dull, wet thuds. The landlady speaks. Her tone is neither welcoming nor unkind. It is transactional with a layer of weather sympathy. The man answers, tired, coins clink, the door closes, and the house folds itself around the newcomer. You remember your own entrance, the narrow look, the weighing of respectability, the judgment of boots, coat, posture, voice. Now you are inside, and someone else stands where you stood, carrying the same wet city on their shoulders. It gives you a faint sense of belonging, though belonging here is temporary and rented by the hour. Still, you're no longer the newest arrival. This is how community begins in small, ridiculous increments. People who examine Victorian lodging houses often disagree about whether to view them mainly as lonely, impersonal commercial spaces, or as places where temporary forms of community could emerge. Some evidence shows exploitation, crowding, suspicion, and strict house rules. Other accounts suggest recurring lodgers, shared meals, familiar servants, informal help, gossip, and fragile companionship. The truth likely changed from house to house, street to street, and week to week. Standing in this dim room, hearing the house absorb one more wet person, you feel how both could be true. A lodging house can be lonely and communal at once. The smell of evening food grows stronger, something savoury, perhaps broth, onion, boiled meat, potatoes, or cabbage. Victorian cooking smells are not delicate ghosts. They climb stairs with confidence. The scent enters your room around the door and joins the coal smoke. Your stomach stirs again. Tea and bread were enough for sleep. But waking makes a person ambitious. You're not starving, only newly aware that the day has another chapter. The fire has dropped low, and you decide it needs attention if you are to remain comfortable a little longer. You stir it gently, and a muted glow opens beneath the ash. It is like waking another sleeper. A few fragments shift. The room warms a little near the grate. You do not add much coal, just enough to keep the chill from reclaiming the corners too quickly. The act feels domestic, though this is not your home. Perhaps domesticity can be borrowed. Perhaps that is what lodging is. You return to the chair and touch your coat. It is still damp at the hem, but wearable. Not pleasant, but wearable. The gloves are drying into a stiff shape that will need coaxing. The boots are better, though not fully forgiven. You imagine putting them on again and stepping back into the wet street. The thought makes the bed look more tender. The blanket, recently suspicious, now seems loyal. The child laughs somewhere below, quickly muffled again. A kettle whistles or nearly whistles. Crockery gathers in some unseen room. A man clears his throat. The landlady's steps cross the hall with authority. The servant climbs again, and this time a knock comes at your door. You answer, smoothing your clothing first, and the tray is collected. The servant glances around with quick professional eyes, notices nothing disastrous, and vanishes with cup, saucer, crumbs, and the small evidence of your comfort. The table looks bare afterward. The room feels a little less inhabited, as if the tea had been a friendly visitor. Rain fills the empty space. You sit on the bed's edge and listen to the house settling into evening, each person arriving, speaking, eating, warming, waiting. Your own sleep lingers behind your eyes like a soft grey curtain. Outside, the lamps are beginning to matter more than the sky. The lamps outside begin to take command of the street. At first they are only small blurs behind rain, pale circles trembling in the wet glass. Then, as the afternoon drains into evening, they become stronger, steadier, more necessary. The sky has not gone completely dark, but London no longer trusts it. One by one, lights appear in windows, shops, hallway sconces, street lamps, street, and passing vehicles, each flame making its little argument against the damp. You sit near the edge of the bed, listening to the house grow brighter in sound even as the world grows dimmer. Downstairs, voices gather around food. Someone arrives late and is scolded lightly, perhaps for the rain they bring in, perhaps for something older than weather. A kettle is set down with a heavy clink. A door opens and closes. Footsteps climb, pause, descend. The lodging house has changed its mood. It's no longer a quiet refuge for afternoon sleep. It is becoming an evening machine. In London, by the 1880s, gaslighting had already transformed much of urban life, especially in streets, shops, public buildings, and many homes. Although access and brightness varied by district, building, and income, gaslight extended working hours, made evening movement easier, brightened shop fronts, and altered the feeling of the city after dark. Yet it did not create the clean. Even brilliance modern people expect, it flickered, hissed, smelled, stained ceilings, consumed oxygen, and cast shadows that could make a room feel both safer and stranger. You notice this as the room's own light shifts. If there is a gas bracket, the flame may be turned low, carefully, because gas costs money and carelessness costs more. If there is only a candle or lamp, it offers a softer, more fragile glow. Either way, the corners remain dim, the washstand fades into shadow. The chair with your coat becomes a bulky silhouette. Your boots look black and thoughtful near the hearth. The bed, recently your small island of sleep, now appears more ordinary again, a narrow piece of furniture in a rented London room. A little-known evening nuisance is that gaslight could warm and stale the air in already close interiors. It did not simply illuminate a room, it added heat, smell, fumes, and a faint pressure to the atmosphere, especially if ventilation was poor. People valued it, of course, because light is powerful, but like coal, it came with a bargain. Victorian comfort often asks, would you like to see clearly, breathe easily, or afford supper? Please choose 2 if history is feeling generous. You stand and go to the window. The glass is cold beneath your fingertips. Outside, the street glows in broken reflections. Rainwater catches lamplight and stretches it into long, wavering lines along the road. The wheels of a cab pass through gold streaks, breaking them apart. A figure beneath an umbrella hurries along the pavement. A shop opposite has lit its window. It's Vierswald. And for a moment the goods inside appear almost theatrical tins. Cloth, bottles, loaves. Or perhaps small household items arranged to tempt people who have just remembered they are tired and cold. The rain has not stopped, but it has become part of the evening rather than the afternoon. Earlier it made you seek shelter. Now it makes the lit places glow with greater intimacy. Every doorway seems warmer because the street is wet. Every lamp seems kinder because the sky is low. You understand why memory turns such scenes into nostalgia, even when the actual experience includes leaking boots, smoky air, and a pillow with the thickness of a folded apology. The house's smells change too. Food comes forward, coal remains, damp wool remains. But now there is broth, fat, onions, tea reheated, perhaps beer from someone's supper, perhaps tobacco smoke from a man who believes the entire building has been waiting for his pipe. The scent presses under the door and settles in the room. You are no longer sleepy in the same way. Your nap has left a tender heaviness, but evening asks practical questions. Will you eat? Will you stay? Will you go out again? Will the rain improve? London answers none of these. It prefers to make noise. There is ongoing disagreement among historians about how far artificial lighting changed ordinary people's sense of time in the 19th century. Some see gaslight as part of a major transformation, stretching commerce, leisure, policing, and domestic activity deeper into the evening. Others caution that class, cost, habit, and local conditions limited its effects. So many people still lived by older rhythms of daylight, fuel, fatigue, and household routine. From this window, you can feel both truths. The lamps extend the day, yes, but they do not erase tired bodies or wet streets. They merely let everyone see their exhaustion more clearly. A knock sounds somewhere nearby. Not at your door this time. A tray is delivered. A voice thanks the servant. Another voice complains that the room is cold. The servant answers with something too low to hear. You imagine the exchange perfectly. Coal is dear, weather is unfortunate, and human beings are never satisfied. Somewhere, a laugh follows, the building softens around it. You turn back to your room and begin to restore yourself for evening. Collar tightened, though not as severely as before, sleeves smoothed, hair patted into a shape that suggests intention. Gloves checked, coat inspected, boots tested again. Putting on boots that are only partly dry is an ancient form of disappointment. You slide one foot in rarely and feel the leather still cool at the toe. Not wet enough to be unbearable, not dry enough to be kind. The second boot is better, which feels unfair to the first. You rise and take a few steps. The boots creak differently now, warmed and stiffened by the hearth. The floorboards answer beneath them. You adjust your clothing again, preparing for the possibility of being seen in the hall. This room has allowed you to be loose, drowsy, and human. The hallway will require a return to presentation. Victorian life, even at modest levels, often involves crossing between selves, the body that sleeps, the body that eats, the body that pays, the body that must look respectable enough to avoid questions. Outside, a lamplighter may still be working in some streets, though many central areas already have established lighting routines. You imagine him moving through rain, pole raised, flame touching flame into life. The image is almost too perfect, but not false. The city after dark does not appear by magic. It is lit by labour, maintained by systems, paid for by rates, companies, households, and customers. Every glow has a practical history behind it. The fire in your grate is low again. You decide not to feed it much more. The room has served its purpose. It dried you, warmed you, held you while you slept, and returned you to the evening with slightly creased clothing and a calmer mind. That may be more than many rooms accomplish. You smooth the blanket once more, because leaving a bed in disorder feels like insulting an accomplice. The rain on the window becomes finer, almost mist-like. The lamps outside turn each drop into a brief spark. For a few quiet seconds, you stand between the bed and the door, not quite ready to leave the pocket of warmth, not quite ready to lie down again. London waits on both sides of the threshold outside in the glowing wet streets. Inside in the stair, voices, rules, supper smells, rules, and shared walls. Evening has entered the city fully now, and the cosy refuge of the afternoon is slowly becoming a nighttime lodging, with all its shadows, lamps, footsteps, and fragile promises of rest. You remain by the door for a little while, listening to the evening settle through the house. The room behind you holds the shape of your afternoon, the bed slightly smoothed, the chair no longer burdened by soaked wool, the fire low and red, the window silvered with rain. Nothing here is grand enough to impress a travel writer, and yet it has done the essential work of shelter. It has taken you from the wet street, warmed your hands, dried your boots a little, fed you tea and bread, and let you disappear from London for one soft hour. That may be the quietest kind of luxury. You think again of the city outside, now darker, shinier, and more alive beneath the lamps. London in 1884 is not resting. It is never resting completely. Somewhere. Printers work through the evening. Railway porters haul luggage under smoky glass roofs. Nurses move through hospital wards. Cab drivers sit hunched against the rain. Policemen patrol wet corners. Servants carry trays up to narrow stairs. Families gather around small fires. Clerks return home with damp cuffs and tired eyes. Children are tucked into beds, or share beds, or resist beds with the ancient confidence of children everywhere. The city is enormous, but sleep still has to happen one body at a time. A solid truth about Victorian London is that rest was shaped by class as much as by weather. Some people slept in private bedrooms with fires, curtains, servants, and clean linen. Others shared rooms, beds, or lodging spaces, depending on income and circumstance. Some slept after long labour, some between shifts, some while travelling, some in institutions, some in crowded rented rooms where every cough and footstep had an audience. Your cosy rainy afternoon has been possible because you found a door that opened, a bed that could be paid for, and a room where the rain became sound instead of suffering. You touch the latch but do not lift it yet. The bed calls gently behind you, not with perfection, it is too lumpy for that, not with innocence, it has had too much experience, but with warmth, weight, persuasive memory of sleep. The blanket holds the little climate your body made beneath it. The pillow still remembers the side of your face, even the mattress hollow, which first seemed like a personal insult, now feels familiar. There is comfort in recognition, however brief. Rain slides down the window in thin paths. Each drop catches lamplight and then vanishes at the sill, across the street. A figure passes behind a curtain. A hand draws the fabric closed. Another room becomes private for the night, or as private as London allows. The gesture feels tender. All across the city, curtains are being drawn, fires are being stirred, boots are being set near hearths, collars loosened, kettles emptied, candles trimmed, blankets pulled up, and complaints about the weather repeated with ritual devotion. Civilization, at this hour, looks very much like trying to get warm. One curious detail of the age is that many Victorians believe strongly in the moral and physical value of orderly domestic routines. Air the bed, manage the fire, fold garments properly, keep the body clean, take tea at the right time, sleep in the right clothing, rise with purpose. Of course, ordinary life often laughed at these ideals. Rain-soaked hems, coal-smoked bourgeoisie, children cried. Lodgers arrived late. Boots refused to dry still. The ideals mattered because they gave people a way to make small order inside a vast, difficult city. Your own afternoon has followed that pattern without needing to announce its arrival. Drying, washing, tea, bed, sleep, waking, smoothing, waiting. The house shifts around you. The servant's steps pass again, descending this time. A man laughs downstairs, then coughs. Someone opens a door and lets in a brief blade of cold air. The landlady says something decisive. A chair is moved. Crockery clinks. The building is no longer a background. It is a living thing, full of bodies negotiating warmth, privacy, money, hunger, and fatigue. You are one of them for now, though only temporarily. Writers and historians still differ on how to describe comfort in places like this. Some emphasize hardship, and they are not wrong. Smoke, damp, noise, shared facilities, uncertain bedding, and the cost of fuel all shape the truth. Others remind us that comfort in the past often appeared in smaller, more fragile forms: a cup of tea in cold hands, a door closed against rain, a blanket warmed by the body, a fire watched carefully enough to trust, a room that lets a tired person stop performing for a while. Standing here, you do not have to choose only one version. The room contains both. It is poor by modern standards and precious by human ones. You step back from the door, not yet, you decide, not quite yet. The rain is still falling, and the bed is still warm enough to receive you. Evening may have arrived, but nothing demands that you surrender the room immediately. So you return to the bed with slow movements, as if not to disturb the quiet bargain you made with it. You loosen your collar again. You remove the boots carefully, grateful that they are less wet than before. You set them near the hearth, but not too near, because you have learned. You place your gloves beside them. You smooth your clothing enough to lie down without twisting yourself into historical discomfort. Then you climb back beneath the blanket. The sheet is no longer cold. It recognizes you now. The pillow accepts your head with its thin, tired kindness. The room has darkened further. but the low fire gives just enough glow to shape the furniture. Your coat hangs like a shadow over the chair. The washstand waits in pale outline. The window glistens. Beyond it, London continues, but softly, as if distance has thickened around every sound. The final rest comes more easily than the first. Your body knows the mattress. Your ear knows the house. The rain is no longer a problem to be solved. It is simply there, steady and close, washing the roofs and streets, tapping the panes, filling gutters, turning lamplight into trembling gold. You're warm enough, dry enough, hidden enough. That is all the city can promise. And tonight, or this rainy afternoon sliding into night, it feels like enough. Now the pace of everything begins to slow. The voices below become less distinct, softer, rounder, like stones under shallow water. The fire settles into a red whisper. The rain no longer taps so much as breathes, long and even, across the glass. You let your hands rest under the blanket, no longer clenched against cold, no longer busy with buttons, cups, boots, or latches. The day has loosened its hold on you. The wet streets, the muddy crossings, the watchful doorway, the tea tray, the smoky grate, the thin walls, the uncertain bear, all of it drifts backward into a single warm grey memory. You do not need to understand the whole city now. You do not need to solve its poverty, its smoke, its restless streets, its crowded rooms, or its endless rain. You're only asked to rest inside one small pocket of shelter, one dim upper room, one bed warmed by your own breathing. Outside, London carries on, because London always carries on. Inside, the blanket rises and falls with you. Quiet as a tide, the rain keeps the world gentle at the edges. Lamps blur, wheels pass and fade, footsteps climb and vanish somewhere. Another tired person closes another door, pulls another blanket close, and listens to the same weather. For a moment, across all those walls and roofs and narrow streets, rest feels shared, not spoken, not perfect, but present. So you let the city become distant. You let the room become simple. You let the fire become a soft red dot behind your eyelids. You let the rain do the talking. Down it falls over chimney pots, slate roofs, glass panes, carriage wheels, market stalls, and the dark patient river. Down it falls until the street shines and the room grows quiet and your thoughts thin into mist. You are warm. You are sheltered. You are almost asleep, and London, vast and wet and murmuring, keeps watch in the rain. Sweet dreams.